Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Hayward City Council. I'm going to call this meeting to order and ask Councilmember Zermeño to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Right, can you hear me? Yes?
Now we can, yes.
Okay, so begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Good evening. Councilmember Andrews. Councilmember Andrews is absent. Councilmember Lamnin.
Present.
Councilmember Marquez.
Present.
Councilmember Salinas.
Present.
Councilmember Wahab.
Here.
Councilmember Zermeño.
I am present.
Thank you. Mayor Halliday.
Here.
Thank you.
So that brings us to our closed session announcement, and I will turn it over to our city attorney, Mr. Lawson, regarding item number 1, and I'll make the announcement regarding item number 2.
Greetings, Mayor and Council. This evening, the Council convened in closed session at 5:15 p.m. pursuant to posted notice in the Brown Act. With Council members Zermeño and Andrews absent and with no public speakers, the Council considered the following matters. 1, RLW et al. Versus City of Hayward. The Council discussed pending litigation and provided direction to Council, COUNSEL, but otherwise took no reportable action. Mayor, number 2, I will defer to you.
All right, thank you. We also met on item number 2, which is regarding the case of Nishioka versus the City of Hayward. And again, we took no reportable action.
And Mayor, can you indicate when the closed session adjourned?
Yes, the closed session adjourned at approximately 6:45, I believe.
I think it was 6:40, Mayor.
6:40? Okay, approximately 6:40.
Thank you. That completes the report.
All right. That brings us to public comments this evening. Is there anyone who would, yes, I do see we have some, so I'm going to open public comments. This is your opportunity to comment on any items that are not otherwise on our agenda this evening. I see that we have some hands raised on Zoom here, so I will call the first speaker, Susan Gelke.
Hello, I'm Susan Gelke with Hayward Concerned Citizens. I had a question, actually, and a statement. Yesterday, of course, was 4th of July, and everything, well, I live in the hills, and usually people up here are very respectful and they know the fire danger. But last night, one of my neighbors 2 doors down from me was lighting fireworks in his backyard, which really freaked me out because of the fire danger. And I tried to call the police and all I got was a busy signal because, of course, it was 4th of July. So I'm wondering if somehow we could provide some other kind of a link for people, especially people here in the hills, like call the fire department or something. I know there was no fire, fortunately, but it just seemed like, this was really something that should have been reported. And I was concerned that I was unable to do that. So I just want to make that comment. And also, I'd be curious to know the statistics from last night, whether people were fined, how that's going, because I know this was a New Year ordinance that we started. So I'd be interested to find out more about that. That's about it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And I think we'll go through the other public comments, and then maybe our city manager can provide some kind of a response to the question that you raised. But let's go through other public comments first, because other people might be wanting to talk about the same issue. Next speaker is Mary Beth Bykowski.
Thank you. My name is Mary Beth Bykowski, as she said, and I'm an analyst in the Community Relations and Outreach branch of the Department of Insurance, also known as CDI. I'm happy to be here with you to give you an update on the work we have been doing on your behalf. Safer from Wildfires is an interagency partnership between Insurance Commissioner Ricardo Lara and the Emergency Response and Readiness Agencies and Governor Gavin Newsom's administration. Its purpose is to protect lives, homes, and businesses by reducing wildfire risk. We are working with CAL FIRE, Cal OES, the Governor's Office of Planning and Research, and the California Public Utilities Commission. With California experiencing devastating wildfires intensified by climate change, homes and businesses need insurance they can rely on. So the Insurance Commissioner is using every tool available to improve insurance for our communities. Based on direct experience of first responders and the latest research on wildfires, the partnership created a consistent approach to reducing risk with a list of achievable, certifiable, and effective actions to help make existing homes and businesses safer from wildfires. The ultimate goal is protecting consumers by reducing wildfire risk in their communities, making insurance available and affordable for all Californians. This ground-up approach for wildfire resilience has 3 layers of protection. We call it the Safer from Wildfire 1, 2, 3 plan. So number 1, protect the structure, such as making sure your roof and vents are up to code. Number 2, your immediate surroundings. Is there brush close to your home? Are there flammable items stored under your deck? And finally, number 3, the community. Involve your entire community to prevent wildfires from catching and spreading to other homes and businesses in the neighborhood. This includes enhanced infrastructure and programs like FireWise. You can go to our website at insurance.ca.gov, and on our splash page, there is a link to the Safer from Wildfire page, which goes into detail of a list of actions to take to harden your home and your surroundings and your communities. And lastly, public input is critical to ensure we're on the right track. We held a hearing on April 13th that accepted public comments. The department is now evaluating all of the input from the public, and we expect to have these regulations implemented by the end of summer. So that concludes the overview of Safer from Wildfires. But I want to remind you, if you need insurance help, you can always call 800-927-4357. We have a dedicated staff of experts that can answer your specific questions. And if they don't pick up, you can call. The callback rate is under 2 minutes. And once again, our website is insurance.ca.gov. Thank you, council members. If you have any questions, the city clerk has my contact information.
Thank you. And thank you for the information. Our next speaker is TJ.
Hi, good evening. It's TJ with Hayward Concerned Citizens. I'll be pretty brief. I know Susan already spoke to this, but we made it through another 4th of July, and I was curious about how the new city ordinance on the fireworks has worked out. I know on the Nextdoor app, where we get a lot of feedback, there are still a lot of complaints, the usual complaints about the fireworks and the harm to pets and the noise nuisance. But I know one particular place that was complained about was South Hayward. There seemed to be a lot of fireworks activity there, and also various complaints that police didn't do anything. So at some point, it would be nice to have a debrief either via this meeting or something on the city website or the police blotter that summarizes how many complaint calls the police received, how many citations were issued, and maybe get some feedback how the police and the city felt that it went, and just maybe tweak the ordinance a little bit for next year. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Elena Lepe.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for permit this time. I have questions. I don't know. I think it's the agenda for ARPA funds. I can speak this part, or I need to wait.
I'm sorry, what, I didn't understand, what is your question?
Oh, for funds, for ARPA funds, I can speak this part, or I need to wait.
I think she's wanting to speak about ARPA funds. I don't know that we have a specific agenda item on that this evening, Mayor. So I think public
Yeah.
comment is probably the appropriate time.
Okay. Go ahead and speak now. I don't think we have that otherwise on our agenda this evening, so go ahead.
Okay, and I have questions for ARPA funds. Is include for all people include? I have a lot of maybe 3 or 4 restaurant interest for ARPA funds. It can apply for this part for restaurants, or it's only for, I don't know, what is it? For any organization or no profit or profit is fine. That's fine. I can apply. Some people ask me if it's possible to apply. This is my question. So I don't know. It's for everyone, for sector, for District 2 can apply. Is this a question? So the other, I have a question for homeless planning. I have question for this part. You have planning for extend more support for homeless. I have one family now, 2 families. One family living in the hotel. We have 4 people. One is more than 16 years. She waiting list in the Section A. I help El Puente Comunitario help for help navigate resources for help. But she know I don't have anything now. I don't know if you have any extra support for the families. I appreciate if you have any information. Call me. I give you my number. So the name is Carolina.
Okay. I will have the city clerk get your telephone number. You don't have to say it now at the meeting. Is that you can do that, right?
Actually, Ms. Lepe, if you could please call my office tomorrow. This is the phone number because I don't have a way to get a hold of you. The phone number is 510-583-4400. Please go ahead and give us a call tomorrow to connect.
And that way you can get your questions more fully answered that we couldn't really do here now. So,
Mayor, I will just say that we do have ARPA programs and funding for restaurants and other small businesses. And so I think the city clerk can connect Ms. Lepe with the resources, and she may want to stay on the line and listen to the homelessness update. And then we can also have staff follow up on those issues as well.
yes, that's right. We will be talking about our housing element for one thing, and also getting a report on our homeless count. So you might be interested in those, but you can more fully talk to somebody, or we can connect you with somebody at the city that can really answer your questions. So thank you. I'm not seeing any other hands raised. So, and I'm not seeing that there's anybody here in the chambers who wishes to speak. So I'm going to close public comment. And we will move on to comments from our city manager.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I will just briefly talk about the fireworks. Obviously, since it was just yesterday evening, staff has not had a chance to compile all of the data on the enforcement of the new ordinance. But I did receive a message that the team did meet this morning, and we will be putting together a report summarizing what we did sort of leading up to last night, what we observed, and then next steps, also how the ordinance went. Preliminarily, it looks like we identified over 90 addresses for follow-up enforcement. So that will be, but we will provide more details around that as we go forward. So I just wanted to share that with those who had called in. I know there's still a lot of fireworks, but hopefully as people start to receive fines this year, maybe this will help for next year as well. So first year of a program is always, we always hope we'll see some results, but it usually takes a year or two for people to get the message. So thanks for everyone for being patient with us as we try something different. And then just the other The other thing I wanted to mention is we were going to try to reopen the Weeks Branch Library. Unfortunately, due to some staffing challenges, we're going to continue services only Tuesday through Saturday through the 3rd week of August. We will resume Monday services at the Weeks Branch Library on August 22nd, which coincides with the start of the Hayward Unified School Districts. And so that will enable us to support HUSD students in the fall. Right now, our branch hours are limited to 5 days a week because of the ongoing staff vacancies, and we hope to fill the vacancies in the next week or so. Downtown Library continues to be open Monday through Saturday, and both locations are offering many special programs for the summer. Please check out the Hayward Library website for branch hours, as well as the bookmobile schedule and other summer programs. And I believe that is all of my comments this evening. Thank you, Mayor and Council, and please let me know if you have other questions.
And just for the sake of Ms. Gelke's question, I think it was, she could still call and report what happened, what she saw on her.
Correct. Then she can also do it through Access Hayward to report the address of that where the fireworks were being lit off, and our staff can follow up with that. I will just say, we are short-staffed in our dispatch center. The council did approve a hiring bonus program a couple of weeks ago for dispatchers. So I know it was really challenging to probably get through to dispatch last night, and I know they were overwhelmed trying to field all those phone calls, even though we brought in a lot of folks on overtime. So thank you for everyone's patience with that. But yes, she can still report that address after the fact.
To either the number or even through Access Hayward?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay, so thank you for that. Any questions? I'm not seeing that anyone has any. So we will now move on to our action items this evening, starting with our consent calendar, which this evening consists of items 1 through 20. So is there anyone who would like to pull an item off of the consent calendar? Okay, I'm not seeing that anyone wants to do that, either a member of the public who, I'm seeing one person. Councilmember Marquez.
I'll move the items if there's no members from the public that want to speak on a consent item, and this is items 1 through 20.
Yes, 1 through 20, thank you. Is there a second from Councilmember Zermeño?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so items 1 through 20, moved by Councilmember Marquez, seconded by Councilmember Zermeño. On the motion, Madam City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Andrews, absent. Councilmember Lamnin? Aye. Councilmember Marquez?
Aye.
Councilmember Salinas?
Yes.
Councilmember Wahab?
Yes.
Councilmember Zermeño?
See.
Mayor Halliday?
Yes. Was that a yes, Councilmember Wahab? I couldn't.
Yes.
Yes.
It was a
Okay,
yes.
all right. Thank you. Okay, that moves us on to item number 21. This item was continued from our meeting last week, and it is an update on homelessness in the city of Hayward. We're going to receive the results of the 2022 point-in-time count, and an update on the city of Hayward homelessness efforts, and we're being asked to adopt some resolutions related to some of the services that we are offering. So we will start, well, I think I'm going to just turn it over to our city manager here tonight to start us off.
Great. Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm going to, I think, quickly turn it over to, I believe, Jessica Lobodon, our management analyst, who's been working in our homelessness group. And I think she's going to start off the presentation. Is that correct?
Yes,
Great.
thanks, Kelly.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This evening, I'll be presenting a homelessness update along with my colleague, Amy Cole-Bloom. Thanks, Amy. So as the mayor mentioned, we will be providing the results of the 2022 point in time count, an update on the Let's House Hayward Homelessness Reduction Strategic Plan, updates on the winter warming shelter, Hayward Navigation Center, and Hotel Annex, and then seeking council authorization to adopt resolutions for fiscal year 23 homelessness related professional service agreements. I will start off by sharing results of the 2022 point in time count results. The point in time count is a federally mandated census count of individuals and families experiencing homelessness, both sheltered and unsheltered. It occurs every 2 years, though this in 2021, Alameda County did postpone its count for 1 year due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So the last time Alameda County and Hayward received our results were in 2019. There are 4 components of this count. There's the street count, which is the really early morning deployment, going out and counting individuals and families by looking around. The sheltered count of families, individuals, and youth, and then the follow-up survey to a random sample of both unsheltered and sheltered individuals and families experiencing homelessness. So in Alameda County, across the county, there was a 22% increase in overall homelessness since 2019. While that is a noticeable increase, from 2017 to 2019, there was a 43% increase. And so what this indicates is while the population, the homeless population is growing across the county, the concerted efforts that the county and cities put forward at the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic really did suppress some of the early growth projections that we were seeing at the beginning of the pandemic. Unsheltered homelessness in the county slightly decreased from 79% to 73%. Looking at some of the demographic information across the county, 82% of survey respondents indicated that they resided in Alameda County at the time that they became homeless, with a majority, 68%, having resided in Alameda County for 10 or more years. What this data indicates is that the population that is experiencing homelessness in Alameda County is from the county. They are longtime residents, and really points to individuals being priced out of the housing market, which we can see through what the survey respondents indicated as primary causes of homelessness. The top 3 responses being a dispute with family, friends, or roommates, eviction or foreclosure, or job loss. And when asked what may have prevented their homelessness, 49% indicated that rental assistance could have assisted, with other employment assistance, mental health assistance, and other benefits and income being the top 4 responses. Across Alameda County, we continue to see disproportionately high rates of homelessness among the Black African American population, with 43% of the entire homeless population identifying as Black or African American, compared to just 10% of the general population identifying as Black or African American. Across the county, we are also seeing disproportionately high rates of homelessness among American Indian, Alaska Native, as well as Native Hawaiian and other Pacific Islander. So now I'll discuss the results of the Hayward specific data. In Hayward, unlike across the county, we saw a 22% decrease in overall homelessness since 2019. So while our sheltered population stayed about the same. Our unsheltered population saw a decrease from 372 individuals in 2019 to 267 individuals in 2022. Notably, we did see a sizable increase in the tent homelessness population from 2019 to 2022. And so I think that this speaks to, while the data from the point in time count indicates that there's a decrease in Hayward's homelessness population, this increase in tent homelessness may speak to some of the impacts of homelessness our community continues to face. This is a lot of information, and I'll just pull out some of the highlights, which is that Hayward is not the only city that saw decreases in their homeless population. Albany, Emeryville, and Newark all saw decreases in their homeless populations comparable to Hayward's. Additionally, our neighboring unincorporated Alameda County saw an increase of about 46% in their homelessness population. Looking at some of the demographic information for Hayward, 90% of Hayward survey respondents resided in Alameda County at the time that they became homeless, with 75% of Hayward survey respondents having lived in the county for 10 or more years. 63% of Hayward survey respondents consider Hayward their home, followed by 11% Oakland and 10% Alameda. And like Alameda County, about 50% of survey respondents listed that rental assistance could have prevented their homelessness. Looking at the demographic information for Hayward, like Alameda County, we are seeing disproportionately higher rates of homelessness among the Black African American population, American Indian Alaska Native, and Native Hawaiian other Pacific Islander. Unlike Alameda County, we are also seeing disproportionately higher rates of homelessness among the white population. Thank you, Amy. I will now turn it over to Amy to provide an update on the Let's House Hayward plan.
Yes, thank you, Jessica. Good evening, Council and Mayor. So I'm here to give you a brief update on the Let's House Hayward strategic plan. There's an attachment to this item tonight that provides much more detail, so I'm just giving a high-level overview. As you probably recall, this plan was adopted about a year ago in July of 2021. It has three main overarching goals, which are to formalize a coordinated and compassionate citywide response to homelessness while developing wider community understanding and engagement. The second goal is increasing the availability of and reducing barriers to our homeless crisis response services. And the final goal is ensuring access to and the retention of affordable permanent housing. So one of the high-level needs addressed by the Let's House Hayward plan is identifying strategies and activities that, while they may not have all the funding resources identified in the plan, still create a pipeline of potential projects. It allows us to be more flexible and agile when responding to different funding sources when they do pop up, like the American Rescue Plan Act. So ARPA arrived right as we were finishing the Let's House Hayward plan. So when Council authorized the expenditure plan for ARPA, you were also able to include some key Let's House Hayward activities. These include the additional funding to the Navigation Center and the Annex, as well as the expansion of the winter warming shelter to year-round, both of which Jessica is going to share more about in a moment. It also included the development of a shallow rental subsidy program to prevent homelessness, which was also on consent. Oh, my notes say tonight's calendar, last week's calendar. That one was passed. And then also the development of a program to support the acquisition of tax defaulted or foreclosed properties. That was another Let's House Hayward project that got wrapped into the ARPA funded programs. So as I said, this is just a high-level overview. There's more detail in the attachment tonight. But in addition to allocating ARPA funds to these projects, as I listed, there have been some other really exciting implementation successes in the last, can't believe it's been a year. These include the further enhanced collaboration within the city, across different departments, as well as with partners at the county. We heard from council when the plan was created that engagement with the county was really important, and we've been working really hard and engaging with the county quite regularly on homelessness and prevention and development. We submitted 2 grant applications to the state Home Keep program to acquire and build housing for chronically homeless adults. We are implementing the HEART program, which was a key project from last year's Public Safety Innovations workshops and is intended to improve the city's response to individuals experiencing mental health crises, including those who are also homeless. And the city also successfully implemented its own emergency rental assistance program. We set that up prior to the state emergency relocation assistance and spent those funds down just before that state program happened. So we were able to provide assistance to almost 700 households in Hayward who were financially impacted by COVID. In terms of some of the challenges, there are 3 projects that were behind schedule from the plan, and those have been delayed primarily due to some staff capacity and funding issues. And we're working on moving those forward. But we also have some projects that are ahead of schedule that we didn't expect to be moving forward at this time, but we have been able to. So that is kind of our high level update of Let's House Hayward. 1 year in, we've also been having quarterly updates with a lot of our provider partners and members of the strategic or the steering committee, as well as community members. So we will continue to have those as well to keep folks in the loop as implementation progresses. So I'm going to turn it back over to Jessica now to talk through the winter warming shelter expansion.
Thanks, Amy. So as Amy mentioned, one of the identified programs within Let's House Hayward that received ARPA funding was expanding the winter warming shelter into a year-round nightly shelter with added day resource center. So the shelter opened in October of 2021 and has been operating every night through winter of 2023. I will clarify, winter of 2023 meaning like January, February of 2023, not November, December of 2023. The shelter is open from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. and provides dinner and breakfast. And since opening, 229 individuals have received nightly shelter services. A key component that we heard through the Let's House Hayward planning process was the need for an additional daytime resource center for individuals experiencing homelessness. In March of 2022, the Day Resource Center opened and provides additional warm meals, shower services, case management, COVID-19 testing, dental and medical vans on site, and additional linkage to other community services. Later this evening, we will be recommending that Council amend and extend the FY22-23 agreement for services using previously appropriated ARPA funding. And now I will provide an update on the Hayward Navigation Center and Hotel Annex programs. So before jumping into some of the really exciting outcomes data from these programs, I did want to spend a moment walking through kind of the impacts that the pandemic has had on these city funded services. In January of 19, Council approved opening the Navigation Center, and the Navigation Center was opened 11 months later in November of 2019. And just 4 short months later, the pandemic really launched. The local emergency was declared, and the capacity at the Navigation Center was reduced from 45 beds to 22 beds. Really seeing this as an opportunity to be creative. The Navigation Center Annex was opened out of the partner hotel in February of 2021. That has a capacity of 33 rooms. And in June of 2021, a third dormitory trailer was installed on site at the Navigation Center. I'm happy to report out that in April of this year, the county did loosen their social distancing requirements. And so the current capacity at the Navigation Center is 45 beds and aiming for a gradual increase up to 60 beds. We are working very closely with our partner, Bay Area Community Services, BACS, to ensure that there's weekly testing, that if there is any COVID cases on site, that the proper protocols are followed. But pleased to see that we are able to increase the capacity back up to really what we designed it to be back in January of 2019. And so despite some of these challenges and unknowns, again, I'm happy to report out that the Navigation Center and Annex have had some really exciting outcomes. This chart shows the exits from the Navigation Center and Annex. There have been 211 exits from the program at the Navigation Center and 95 from the Annex. And the overwhelming majority of these exits are to permanent housing. The Annex has a slightly higher rate of exits to permanent housing than the Navigation Center. And followed by permanent housing are exits to homeless situations. And I did want to call this out just to note that in discussions with BACS, the rationale and the reason for these lateral program exits is really that sometimes it's just a better fit for someone to be in a different city where maybe their job is closer, where maybe they have family ties, they've identified a housing placement a little bit closer. And so those homeless situations that we see here, a majority of those are to lateral programs, so other emergency shelters where people are placed and then connected to permanent housing through those service providers. So our recommendation this evening, I'll pause for 1 second, just go back to the last slide, just to say that there is additional information that is provided in the attached Navigation Center and Annex report out, but we did just want to provide this high level report out for tonight's presentation. Thanks, Amy. So our recommendation this evening is that City Council provides comment on the point in time count results in the Let's House Hayward plan, and that Council adopts the resolutions 5, 7, and 8, if my math is correct, to adopt the FY23 homelessness related services contracts for South Hayward Parish, Navigation Center, and Hotel Annex. That concludes our presentation. So we will now take council questions, public comments, and then council comments and action.
All right, thank you for the report. I will go just first for council questions. Councilmember Marquez.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Jessica and Amy, for your excellent and thorough update. I appreciate the information. I understand that we've expanded capacity. We're in the works of doing that for the Navigation Center. And then we have the Annex. Are they partnering with the warming shelter that's now year round? We've seen the numbers go up there. I'm just curious if there's someone doing like triage or an assessment to find out if individuals staying at the shelter would be a good fit for Navigation Center or the Annex.
Yes, we do work with BACS and the program manager on site at South Hayward Parish to make sure that South Hayward Parish can refer into the Navigation Center.
Okay, and then what is the current status to if someone's interested in learning more about the Navigation Center or finding out if they qualify? Do they still have to go through 211 through Eden Information and Referral, or is there another mechanism?
They can still go through 211, and additionally, they can go straight to HEDCO, the Mid-County Housing Resource Center, and we can send out the flyer for that to anyone who's interested. But that's another way that they can become assessed for resources within the Mid-County area.
Okay. And then the breakdown from people exiting the navigation center, you gave the example of a lateral move, just for whatever reason, it makes more sense for that individual to be placed somewhere else. Will we ever have a sense of if there are any individuals that just, it's not a good fit for them for whatever reason and just choose to go back to living, whether it's in the car or in a tent? Do we have any data that points to those type of instances?
We do have that data. I'm just trying to remember. I don't think that's specifically called out in the follow-up report. The number of exits back to literal unsheltered homelessness, I believe are less than 10, but I can look at that and provide that.
Okay, thank you. And then just 2 quick questions. What's the status on facilitating safe parking lots? I know it's in the works, but can you just elaborate on that? And then also, I appreciate all your work on the regional efforts, but are there any upcoming discussions with respect to having other cities open up navigation centers, since this is a regional issue?
Amy, do you want to answer the first question on safe parking?
Yes, if I can unmute. So we have worked with a consultant to do an initial assessment of what it would take to do the safe parking program. And what we have from that is a memo with a lot of considerations for both cost and logistics, which is one of the reasons that we wanted that consultant to really do a deep dive for us and provide a lot of questions for consideration. At this point, the next step would need to be identifying a reliable and sustainable funding source. So that's another example of where this plan has us set up so that when those funding sources become available, we can jump.
And then to your second question, Councilmember Marquez, we are participating in several countywide and regional discussions around planning and how to allocate resources to the most needed interventions. I will say that just on a more informal level, we are also assisting other neighboring cities in helping to set up their own navigation centers. Most recently, we've been working with San Leandro to help them set up their navigation center that they're set to open up. They received council authorization, I think, earlier this year.
Okay, thank you for sharing your expertise. Those are all my questions, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Wahab.
Thank you. I just kind of wanted to understand a little bit more. When we talk about lateral moves, where are they going?
So the majority of the exits back to homeless situations are to other emergency shelters. And then a small proportion of those exits to homeless situations are to literal unsheltered street homelessness. And so what we call the lateral exits are from the navigation center or the Annex into another emergency shelter or navigation center in another city that is not in Hayward.
Okay. And then as far as, some of the data that we're looking at, are we actually, I'd like to know the exact location that these folks move. And the reason why I say that is because BACS has multiple locations throughout the Bay Area, whether it's Berkeley, Oakland, Fremont, so forth. And I don't want them to just be, kind of moving people around just for the data and the numbers that we're looking at, right? Number one. But then the question is, how deep of a data dive have we gone into? Are these individuals, for example, and I stated this, a number of years ago, and consistently when we're talking about nonprofits, are we looking at when they come into a program, do they have a GED? Are they addicted to anything? Are they, eventually getting on a program? What is the exit interview looking like? Has there been success there? That I kind of would like to know. Are we looking at that or?
Yes, we are looking at the data around who has an income and is able to move out and what their length of time in the program is. And in terms of being able to identify the exact locations that individuals exit to, that's a conversation that we can have with BACS. And I think that there's just a question around privacy of where individuals are exiting to.
Okay. And the next question I do have is, so I see that the cost has gone up since the very first year that we granted about $1 million in year one of their program. It has gone up, and obviously it's expanding as well. Are we, just because we're paying attention to our potential economic downturn, inflation, potentially, obviously we've seen an increase in homelessness as well throughout the county. Have we been looking at ways to potentially move them off of the city in case we do have to pay attention a little bit more to the required services that we have to provide?
So I just want to make sure I'm understanding. For the first part of your question, is that the city's contribution to their total contract? Okay.
Yes, but then even when we partner and create, let's say we get a grant here and we're partnering here, I just want to make sure that we are accounting for potential downturn, right? Because I don't want to necessarily shut down a program, but at the same time, are they self-sustaining? Are they, finding resources themselves and much more?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's part of an ongoing conversation that Hayward is having with BACS, that other cities are having with their service providers, which is how to continue funding this new suite of services that is being put onto cities, and is definitely part of the conversation that we are having with the county as well.
Okay. And as far as the county, since social services really falls under the county's purview, are we able to absorb more funding through the county, saying that we are doing the work that we, request however many dollars that, each year that we're doing more and more?
So a part of the recently adopted Home Together 2026 countywide plan is a funding allocation framework, which does articulate the partnership between the county and cities on who's responsible for funding what. And so the county did put into this plan for the first time ever that they will be prioritizing funding for existing services at the city level and working with cities to ensure continuity of care.
Okay. And then final question, as far as the lateral move, do we know what the percentage is? I know it says here about 207 out of the 300 and some odd were permanent. So that's 68%. Am I to assume that, 100% minus 68%, can't do the math off the top of my head, but is lateral moves?
No. So permanent housing situations is the top exit, followed by homeless situations at 16% for the Navigation Center and 11% for the Annex, followed by temporary housing situations at 9% across both programs, and then institutional settings, and then other exits. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you. No, I appreciate this. I look at the staff report. So as much as possible, I do just want to highlight that if I know you kind of stated this, but to understand why they are moving, right? And, my biggest concern is making sure that we are holding the organization accountable, especially if we are investing so heavily in one organization versus, the dozens else out there, and making sure that, we are servicing our Hayward residents. So, for example, the Annex Center and some of the other, efforts that we're doing with the warming shelters and so forth, do they have security?
They do.
Okay, perfect. All right, thank you.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Councilmember Lamnin.
Thank you. I will stick to questions at the moment, but I telling this to myself to just sort of contain my enthusiasm. So just two questions. One, are you also tracking exits from other programs? I know there's a really tight control on the Navigation Center and the Annex, but are there also reports, I'm thinking probably there are because of funding agreements, of exits from the other programs, you know, Ruby's Place, South Hayward Parish,
Fesco.
Magnolia House, Fesco.
I believe so. I'd have to look it up exactly the metrics that we do ask those agencies to report on. I'm not sure off the top of my head.
I would say for those that receive community development block grant funding from the city, those are not exits that we don't ask for that level of detail because we are just asking for what HUD asks us for. But we could potentially have conversations with those programs because I'm sure, as you said, for other funding sources, that's data that they track.
Yeah, I'm sure they're tracking that data and thinking that in terms of continuing to be able to give the full picture of how much this community is providing, those could be helpful data. So maybe for the next quarterly update, if they can share that. Sorry, that was a comment. Last question is potential, so Downtown Streets team, there was a ruling, as I understand it, that kind of HUD goes back and forth about their model being economic development or not, and I think they're now in the not phase. And so can you share just a little bit about what the conversations are about maintaining some kind of jobs program in the city, or have there been any thoughts about that for upcoming funding cycles?
Amy, can you speak to this?
Yes, I can do that one. Yeah, so you're right. Right now, they are in the not stage, and we're having ongoing conversations with our HUD rep with the commitment to get them back into CDBG as quickly as we can. We do have other jobs program recipients through CDBG that are classified as economic development, and that includes 4Cs, which is specifically with childcare providers, as well as Central Community Partners, which does a lot of micro enterprise incubation, and they have some really cool capital partners and private funders that can help supplement what grants the city gives. Does that address your question?
That's helpful, thank you. And I'm sorry, what was the second entity you mentioned? Sorry, I just missed the name.
Yeah, it's Central Community Partners.
Oh.
They're a small organization. They're based out of Oakland, but they've now this current fiscal, or I guess no, we're now in fiscal 23, but last fiscal year and now this year they are CDBG recipients, and they're doing some really cool work. They work primarily with women and minority-owned businesses.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, startups.
I'm always excited to learn about new providers. So thank you very much.
They're very cool.
Oh, good. Okay. Add excitement to this agenda item, which actually it is very exciting. So I'm going to now, I don't see any further hands raised from council members, so we're going to move on to public comments. I'm going to open public comments on this item, and we do have some hands raised, and we'll start with Ro Aguilar.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay, very good. All right, I too want to congratulate the city of Hayward on the slight decrease in the number of homeless for this next count. Although we need to keep in mind that this kind of thing does go up and down depending on circumstances. So we want to be prepared. And I think in seeing a slightly better outcome on the hotel shelter, and knowing and basing it on what I believe, I strongly support the home key hotel option, which you're calling the Annex. And I know you're calling it the Annex because it's politically charged, but here we go again, leadership. 33 people in a hotel, not enough. The home key hotel option versus the downtown shelter, the dormitory style shelter or the little homes has greater flexibility in terms of client needs and greater potential for success. the composition of the client, whether single, a family, a woman, a man. Some people don't do well in dormitory settings, mentally ill, substance abusers, all can be handled better by the hotel setting. It provides more independence, stability, privacy, and safety. And safety is an important one, whether it's physical safety or because of COVID, we're now entering another variant, BA.5 or whatever it is, which is not affected by vaccinations. That means vaccinations don't keep it from spreading. And we may go into another phase where you cannot use the dormitory style shelter. Are we prepared for that? Are we prepared for that? Do we have enough hotels? Because the long-term stability that you can provide in a hotel is much needed. Somebody can stay in a hotel for years even. So I also have a question about the cost of effectiveness of the hotel, leasing or buying a hotel long-term versus little homes. I think we need to study that. And I think number 3, you need to upgrade that in terms of the money to buy or lease more hotel motels, more annexes, if you want to call them that, to be prepared for the future. I too worry about just moving people around to affect the numbers. The hotel, motel with wraparound services, you can really track people for a long period of time. So that's my suggestion and my advocacy. Buff up at number 3.
Thank you. Next, we have Elena Lepe.
Yeah, thank you very much for this time. My name is Elena Lepe del El Puente Comunitario. I congratulations City Hayward. Thank you for all data. That is very, very hard work. I mentioned for the El Puente Comunitario participating in Pitt County and for last time for counting homeless. And this moment, I see a lot of homeless in some areas, but it's less for the other counties. So I see more after the counting. I see more cars in the street for Hayward, for Amador Street. I see more cars in there. I have one example. I like see more example how much you increase. You say you have beds now, but I don't know how many beds have now. How much is increased for how many beds extend more, and what is the projection for 2023? I like to see your projection. Also, I need to check what plan for outreach you have. Counting me and the Puente Comunitario for help. The finally, I think need more outreach inside. So other question I have is, what is you need only referral for organization, or you go in the street for check and one-to-one and the people. It's only, I give you the example for Hayward. I have other support for, is possible, provide voucher for hotel is more important. I have one family way now, maybe living 7 months in the hotel. She don't have support, any support. So I don't know, it's possible to work together for refer more people and help more people, and then give a specific support the people. The people have an hotel 7 months, is have more than 76 years, and have 4 families. She don't have any support for City Hayward. For the finally need support. I work together. Let me know if you need support. Let me know. Thank you for hard work. Thank you for data. But I think I like see more data for the projection. How many beds you have now? How many beds you provide if you can extend the program? I like see this data. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And next we have Warren Cushman.
All the audio now unmuted.
Hello, can you hear me, Mayor?
Yes.
Good. My name is Warren Cushman. I'm totally blind, and I'm also and I'm also a person with a mental health challenge. I live in the unincorporated area of Alameda County, and I want to make 3 quick points. First of all, I am a member of the Mental Health Advisory Board of Alameda County. So the relationship between mental health and affordable housing and homelessness is important to me. I'm aware of some changes going on at the state level with CalAIM and also with the Mental Health Services Act and the funding streams coming from the state. And I'm wondering if there may be some opportunities for cities in terms of procuring mental health funds through the county resources and also through the state resources. So that would be another point would be I am blind, and I do want to point out that for people who have physical disabilities have certain challenges when it comes to homeless shelters that may not be obvious. And so I would point out that Community Resources for Independent Living is a really good agency to work with when it comes to homelessness and people with disabilities. And I hope that at some point the city of Hayward will connect with Krill specifically around challenges for homeless shelters. And then finally, I just want to say that I was quite surprised to hear that I believe I heard 46% increase in the unincorporated area of Alameda County. That elucidates partnershiping and the importance of working with our neighbors in the unincorporated area. I wonder if there is a relationship between the decrease in homelessness in Hayward and the increase in homelessness in the unincorporated area. I wonder if there's an inverse relationship there. And, again, I want to point out the importance of all the cities in the county working together. I will be committed to doing that as a community activist, and I appreciate hearing that Hayward is I believe it was a 22% decrease in homelessness, and I am looking forward to dollaring with you on the next item. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll just answer in part, we certainly are making a lot of effort to work with the county on the money for especially mental health services in general come through the county. And we have been, I won't say we've had great success, but we are really working hard on that. And we have had some success in partnering with the county to get, to have some coordination in how those funds are spent and to address the homeless issues. So thank you for your comments. I don't see any other hands raised. Yep, there just one just went up, and that's Tom Ferreira.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Council. Hi, Mayor. My name is Tom Ferrer. I'm running for Hayward City Council, and I'm on the Hayward Concerned Citizens. Just wanted to talk about the wonderful job that Gary's doing at the Navigation Center. I was able to tour the Navigation Center last month with the Chamber of Commerce, and he's doing a fantastic job there. And I appreciate all the numbers and all the positive numbers. But I don't want to have this keep recirculating. I would like to see other cities in our county helping out. We shouldn't be the main one where all the funding goes to. I don't want us to be in that area. I would like other cities to help us out as well. As far as that, and also the Annex is also doing a wonderful job too. We'll see what St. Regis does in the future. But I also like to see, so we don't have our homeless numbers climbing up again, I would like to see us concentrating more on our affordable housing as we grow in the city, and maybe eliminating the in lieu fees. I know a few planning commissioners wanted to do that, but when they spoke with the city the week later, joint commission meeting, they decided to go the other route and continue what we're doing now. So just consider that. I think in lieu fees are the way to go to get rid of that and focus more on our residents here in Hayward, so we could concentrate on our city and help it grow, and less homelessness in the future, and helping out Gary at our Navigation Center. Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to make a public comment on this item? Seeing no one, either here in the chambers or online, we will go back to council. Councilmember Lamnon.
Thank you, Mayor. I just really want to appreciate, I know that there is still homelessness in the city. There is still more work to be done, but I'd love for us to just take a moment tonight to appreciate all of the work that's been done. The dedication to the issue, I think, is why we saw the drop. There's been so much work done in so many different departments, and I just am so excited about a tangible result. We know anecdotal results. We've been seeing them for years as we continue to roll out new programs and to change the way we deal with homelessness in this city to much more of a place of empowerment and opportunity. Balanced with enforcement, that's still a needed component. But the balance that has come to this city, I really want to applaud loudly and with all of my heart. So thank you for all of that. I'll add a appreciation on the record to our Hayward Rotary Club, who donated $82,000 to buy one of those trailers at the Navigation Center, which did help to reduce costs on an ongoing way. So, mostly just congratulations. I do look forward to hopefully some of the other shelter programs in town can help with sharing their numbers in future reports, just to have an even better picture of what's going on. And if that makes sense for everybody. And with that, I am proud to move the item.
All right, thank you.
I'll second.
And Councilmember Wahab?
Yes, I'll second.
Okay.
I do just want to highlight and thank Ms. Jessica Lobadon, who I know has been working very, very hard on this issue for a number of years. Even if you talk to the staff of the other agencies, they reference you the most. So I do just want to give you kudos there. And obviously everybody else who's working on it, our assistant city manager, deputy city manager, Jennifer Ott, and Christine Morales, and the entire housing committee, I'm going to say, is been working on this for a long time. My only things, and as we move into more agreements and focusing on what else can we do, I do just want to highlight that any land that we give, and I know it's a liability, I do want the city to have some authority over that as how things are operated. Making sure that we are providing security on site. Not only for those that are dealing with, housing insecurity, but also just making sure that things don't escalate for the safety of those individuals being serviced, as well as the neighbors in the area. I do also just want to highlight the fact that I would like a little bit more data with the providers. And the reason why is because the more we hold them accountable, the more success we do see. I think we started this, a couple of years ago, and I'm very big on that. The presentation about, homeless situations, institutional situations, other situations of like how they exit. If you add all of the other four besides the permanent housing solution, that number's pretty large, right? So if you add, whether it's 16% plus 6 plus 4 plus 9, or, the other bar graph, the Annex part, it competes with the permanent effort. And our goal is permanent housing situations, no other situation. The other thing is I don't want, I understand the privacy aspect, but I will say, as a person who has gone to the Annex program, who has toured the Homeless Navigation Center and the whole nine, our police officers and our housing folks do know who we are servicing, right? Because they have a long history with a lot of these individuals, right? We do have their information, right? And so just making sure as to holding that organization accountable, so we don't see, people just bouncing from place to place to place, because this is what we see in DV shelters a lot, right? They're limited 3 months and then they have to bounce to another shelter, or they're back on the street. I don't want to repeat that here. And if we are, servicing Hayward residents that are experiencing housing insecurity, or even others that, in different neighboring cities, unincorporated and so forth. We do need to keep track of that, making sure that, one, are they getting the services they need, not just housing, but, whether it's substance abuse, whether it's mental health services, whether it's, X, Y, and Z. And again, holding the organization accountable for more data and more transparency in that. Obviously, when it's reported to us at a higher level and a public level, it does not need to be shared every single little detail. But I do believe the city needs to be, more in depth in again, holding these organizations accountable. The reason why I say that is because this is a significant amount of funds, whether it's from the city directly, the county, or the state, or so forth. And, these organizations are buying land or buying a lot of different properties. Property is valuable still. And, if we are, bending over backwards to help in so many different ways and donate this and donate that, we also need to make sure that they are doing their job and servicing the people we need at a higher capacity. So that's my 2 cents. It's very, very important when we're talking about data. And I know you guys are doing a great job about that. I also just want to highlight that one of the issues that was consistently brought up is, and I've said this in the past, our senior homeless population is expected to triple in the next decade. That is what a lot of the think tanks have stated. I'm very concerned about that because seniors, one, majority of them are on a fixed income, but they also don't have earning capacity to that of, let's say somebody my age or something like that. So I want to make sure that we are prioritizing them in some effort, right? As much as possible. Other than that, again, I think you guys have done an incredible job. I think everybody that has their hand in this has been working extremely hard, and it clearly shows because I think that we have done a lot better than many of our neighboring cities. So thank you.
Thank you. Although I will say some of us seniors still have some earning capacity, but no, point well taken. I'm sorry. I just Councilmember Salinas. No, it's okay. Okay. Councilmember Marquez.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to ask the mover and the seconder. They were wanting to approve items 1 through 3, correct? Because it's like a bundle deal on this one.
Yeah.
That
Okay.
is,
Thank
that
you.
is-
Yes.
Yeah.
The staff recommendation. Absolutely.
Got it.
Thank you.
Okay, just making sure. Thank you. So again, I just want to echo some of the comments Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem Lamnin made. I really want to commend her as well. I think she brought these issues to our attention way before we were even ready to process. It was probably back in 2016, and thankfully the city did. We finally made it a priority. It took some struggle, some back and forth, but I'm really proud of the progress we've made. And thank you, Council Member Lamnin, for raising that early on. I also want to commend staff for just being a good example and great partner and collaborating with surrounding cities, because it's truly what it's going to take to tackle this issue. It is a regional issue. And when we had a debriefing a couple weeks ago from our lobbyists, we also need to put an emphasis with state and federal lobbyists to identify those revenue streams coupled with county commitments. So that's the only way we're going to be able to maintain all these amazing services. But I'm happy to support these items and look forward to more updates. And it was definitely an eye opener to participate in the count. I've done it the last 2 go rounds, and it's really unfortunate to see firsthand how people are impacted in our community, but also reassuring to know that there are options and more good services hopefully coming out in the near future. But I think we definitely have set a good blueprint for the region. So hopefully more cities will get on board and adopt many of the services we have. And thank you to all the nonprofit providers who are providing the direct service. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so, and I'll just add my, echo the thanks to everybody who has worked on the staff. Our staff has been a big part of not only the work here in our city, but as I said, throughout the county, because the county has gotten it. The other cities, believe me, they all are participating. They are all, even some of the wealthier cities that you don't think would have as much of a problem are participating in trying to improve the facilities that we have for homeless people throughout the county, and also the services that are provided, and trying to get better dialogue and cooperation from the county in terms of providing those services in a way that really meets the needs that we all know exist, especially in the homeless population for especially mental health and substance abuse treatment. And I think one of the callers earlier also raised a really good point about people who have other kinds of disabilities, physical disabilities, have a lot of challenges, and and being homeless, those other disabilities just exacerbate that experience, I guess. And so I do worry that we actually have the capacity to provide the services that are needed. And I think we've seen that be an issue in the county. So we have to figure out how to make that work, and how to make sure that we really are providing the services that the whole person needs to get back into a permanent housing situation. But I think this shows that we're improving in that, at least here in Hayward, and really I think you can see more efforts to address all of these issues throughout our whole county. People don't necessarily know where one city border, one city ends and another begins, or where the county unincorporated areas. So you do need to look at the whole picture, and we're all affected by what is around us. But I thank staff too, and will be supporting the motion. And with that, I will ask our city clerk to please call the roll for the motion to support the staff recommendations on the adoption of the resolutions that they've asked us to adopt. The motion was made by Councilmember Lamnon, seconded by Councilmember Wahab.
Yes, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Andrews, absent. Councilmember Lamnon.
Aye.
Councilmember Marquez.
Aye.
Councilmember Salinas.
Yes.
Councilmember Wahab.
Yes.
Councilmember Cermeño.
Aye.
Mayor Halliday.
Yes, and the motion carries with 6 aye votes and 1 absent. Thank you, everyone. And so now we will move on to item 22, which also involves housing. This is a work session on our housing element that is part of our general plan, and is a part of that general plan that we are, under orders from the state, shall we say, or that is, the state requires that we update this every, I believe it's 7 or 8 years. And this is the year 2023. So we will be updating our housing element, and Steph is already hard at work on that. And I'll turn this over. I get to Assistant City Manager Assistant City Manager Development Acting. All right, I'll get this right. And it might be wrong, but I have Acting Assistant City Manager and Acting Development Services Director Clausen. Is he here? Is he going to be introducing this item?
I'm not sure if he's still on. Anyway, I'm happy to introduce
So we'll turn it over to our city manager.
Thank you. Mayor and Council, again, just continuing on the theme of housing this evening, I'm going to introduce our principal planner, Leah Schmidt, and it looks like one of our consultants, Jason Montague from Rincon Consultants, who will take us through kind of the preliminary steps that the staff has been working on with respect to developing our updated housing element, including the comprehensive community engagement process that has been happening in this round of the housing element. There are a couple policy related questions we would like direction on tonight so that staff can go ahead and then start to prepare the draft housing element. So with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Schmidt.
Thank you so much, Kelly. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. I sometimes don't know. Oh, that's so
We're not seeing you as well, but we can hear you.
Okay, that was unfortunate. Okay, I'm going to share my screen.
Uh-oh, we just lost sound from you, and yeah.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, and we can hear you now too. Okay.
Perfect. Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for having me tonight. I'm really excited to be here to present an update to the housing element. As you know, we started this work a year ago. I think it was in July when the City Council adopted a resolution to hire Rincon consultants to head up this housing element update, along with updates to the climate action plan, the safety element, and to develop an environmental justice element for Hayward. I'm joined here tonight by Jason Montague. He is helping as part of the Rincon team, and they have been instrumental in developing a creative, holistic, and hopefully compliant draft housing element. In May, I believe it was, a little bit ago, environmental services staff presented an update on the climate action plan and environmental justice element, just gave you an update on progress. And tonight, that's what I'm doing with the housing element. I'm presenting a couple of key chapters, specifically on the sites inventory and how the city can accommodate the regional housing need allocation, and the housing plan, which contains the goals, policies, and actions that the city will accomplish in the next 8-year cycle. Again, the purpose of this work session is to present draft materials, answer questions, and to get some comments from you, high-level comments on the 2 chapters that are before you before we release this draft housing element. Briefly, I know that you all have been through the Housing Element 101, so I won't go on and on about this, but for people who are visiting in the public section, a housing element is a statutorily required element of the general plan. It must be updated every 8 years, and it is the only element of the general plan that is approved by the state. It's reviewed and approved by the State Department of Housing and Community Development. The 8-year cycle coincides with the regional housing needs allocation, which is the fair share housing allocation that every jurisdiction in the state of California is allocated to accommodate existing and future housing needs. So the housing element is composed of many different parts, again, primarily set by statute, by state law. Tonight, we're going to talk about public participation. We're going to give a very brief overview of housing needs, which have informed some of the inventory and action plans. We're going to go over resources and inventory, and then we're going to touch briefly on the housing plan. So this is an overview of the topics we're going to cover today. So on the topic of public participation, city staff and the consultant have worked diligently to get into the community, to meet people where they are, and in order to provide opportunities to learn about the housing element just in general, what it is, why is it important to you, what does it mean, and to provide feedback. Generally, and this is not a completely exhaustive list, but we created a project website that had links to videos, articles, and other background and educational materials about what is zoning, what is redlining, what is calculating your carbon footprint and doing different sort of learning just about environmental justice and climate in general, and just sort of the history of Hayward as well. There are links to Russell City videos and articles, as well as Kelly Hill. We had a social media campaign where we had a story and asked people to write in about their housing, 3 words to describe their housing situation. On this slide, you can sort of see some of the responses. We had bilingual flyers that were mailed to all the Hayward households and handed out flyers and talked to individuals at grocery stores, laundromats, BART, farmers market, community events, focus groups. We also prepared surveys in English, Spanish, and Chinese and offered sort of prizes to 5 people who've completed them. We had a housing site simulation activity where it was like a video game. People could just identify where they would want to see housing. We've had community workshops on environmental justice and climate action plan, a couple of those. And then we do have a housing workshop later this month. And then we did have a partnership with Chabot Community College to interview about 390 Hayward residents around the topics of housing, feelings of segregation, environmental pollution, and just what's important to them in their community. And here's just, we did create a gallery of posters around housing, environmental justice, climate change, and they were bilingual posters and very graphic heavy, just talking about these topics in general. They were at the library and City Hall, and we've taken them around to all of our meetings. This is a meeting at the Tyrell Elementary School. And people would write, it was part of the Hayward Promise neighborhood, but people would write their comments and just put sticky notes up on the poster in areas where that were important to them. And the city staff is working with our GIS folks to take all the interviews that the students conducted and putting it on a map so people can read and filter through those surveys and to provide that to HCD. And as you can see, these little blue houses indicate people that were interviewed, and they were all the way across Hayward, east to west, north to south. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jason Montague to talk about housing needs.
Thank you, Leah, and good evening, Mayor and Council. Is my sound okay? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so one component of the housing element is a detailed analysis of Hayward's existing and future housing needs. These needs factor into the site selection process and also the creation of the housing policies, programs, and actions. So we'll briefly discuss a few of the major points of the housing need in Hayward. Next slide, please. Hayward's population has grown by about 44% in the last 30 years. In that time, Hayward has experienced a diversity in its population that consists of high percentages of Hispanic, Asian, and white residents. The population is also progressively getting older, as the median age in Hayward has increased from 31 years in 2000 to 35 in 2019. Employment trends are also changing, as Hayward is seeing a decrease in manufacturing jobs and an increase in jobs in education and health services. Next slide, please. Housing affordability is also an identified issue in the city of Hayward, as shown on the bar graph. High percentages of extremely low income, very low, and lower income households experience cost burden, which means that they spend more than 30% of their monthly income on housing. Nearly half of all renters in Hayward also experience cost burden, and about 30% of owners experience cost burden. And by race, around half of Black or African American and half of Hispanic or Latinx residents also experience housing cost burden. Next slide, please. So between 2000 and 2019, the population of Hayward has grown by approximately 18%, while the housing stock has grown by approximately 9%. Hayward has also seen an increase in single-person households and a decline of households with a married couple with children in the last 10 years. The housing stock is also getting older, with approximately 67% of the Hayward's housing stock being over 30 years old and more likely to have rehabilitation needs. And for reference, for the bar graph, the green portion of the bar graph represents renter-occupied units, and the blue portion represents owner-occupied units. Next slide, please. So now shifting over to the housing resources and the sites inventory, which describe how the housing element will accommodate its RHNA. Next slide, please. So this graphic shows Hayward's RHNA allocation. So the RHNA consists of around 2,000 above moderate units, around 800 moderate income units, a little over 600 low income units, 528 very low income units, and 547 extremely low income units. So to put these income categories in context, a household that makes between $73,000 and $114,000 per year is considered low income based on the Alameda County area median income, while an above moderate household makes over $171,000 per year. The housing element will need to show that the city has the capacity to accommodate all of these units at all of these income levels. Next slide, please. This slide shows how Hayward intends to meet its RHNA requirement. Units will be accommodated through projects that are currently in the pipeline, so that are planned or approved, anticipated ADUs, and a number of sites identified in the downtown specific plan area, Mission Boulevard corridor, and the former Route 238 corridor. The table also shows how many of these units are on sites that are currently vacant and sites that are currently underutilized. You can see that there's a surplus number of units for each income category on the bottom. So Hayward's RENA can be accommodated through existing zoning, and no rezoning is required to meet the RENA. Next slide, please. So sites were selected through a number of ways, and this criteria is spelled out in detail in the Housing Resources chapter. So the inventory primarily identified sites in areas near existing transit and commercial services, such as the downtown specific plan area and the Mission Boulevard corridor. Sites were additionally vetted to meet HCD's size and density requirement for lower income sites. So the density requirement is at least 30 units per acre, and the size requirement is between 1/2 acre and 10 acres. Those are the sites that can accommodate lower income housing. The inventory identifies vacant sites in these areas and underutilized sites with a high likelihood of redevelopment within the next 8 years. A few of these existing uses, there's parking lots, warehouses, single tenant retail, and older automobile dealerships. There are also 16 city-owned sites identified on the inventory that are currently either vacant or used for parking. All the identified sites have an existing zoning that allows for high-density residential development. And again, the Housing Resource chapter goes into much more detail, including establishing the local development trends that have been occurring in Hayward.
Great.
Next slide, please.
So I'll take it from here and just talk a little bit about the sites. This map shows the approved and pending projects in Hayward. There are a total of 28 development projects, and of those projects, 5 of them are 100% affordable. 13 have an affordability component, generally in compliance with the inclusionary housing ordinance or density bonus requirement, or include affordable ADUs as part of the development. And 10 projects consist solely of market rate units affordable to above moderate households, or will just not have income restrictions on them. As you can see, a majority of the development projects are located along the Mission Boulevard form-based code. They're on the Caltrans 238 parcels in downtown. And then there are just a few scattered throughout Hayward in different areas. Here's an overview of our inventory sites. And as you can see, these yellow and light green, not the darker green, it's kind of hard to read, but these sites generally follow the development pattern of this one. You can see that they follow along that spine. And basically, the goal here is to show that we can meet the RENA. If we go over the RENA, or if sites that are not on this list are developed, we're not penalized. We're just showing yes to this, telling the state, yes, we can meet our regional housing need allocation on these sites. So briefly, in the downtown specific plan area, we have a potential for 1,606 sites on 29 different parcels. And they're shown here in orange. Vacant is yellow, non-vacant, which again includes being used as a parking lot, is orange. The Mission Boulevard form-based code has potential for 1,526 units on 15 parcels. And then in the Route 238 corridor, we've seen those 238 properties pretty much entitled during the last housing element cycle. There are 2 significant properties that still remain. You have Parcel Group 6, or the quarry site. It's on the upper right-hand side of the photo, and then a remnant of Parcel Group 7. A portion of it was already developed as the new Subaru dealership, but there's a portion that could be developed in the next housing element cycle. On these sites, we assume a total of 510 units. So the site's capacity, which is detailed in attachment 2 to the staff report, does have the development capacity of 3,642 new housing units at a variety of income levels. That number, combined with the already approved and pending projects, gives the city a 50% buffer in sites capacity. So not only can we meet the RENA, but we can actually show a buffer without rezoning. It's really important to note here too that development can and will likely occur on sites not in this inventory. And that while the city's assumptions rest primarily on higher density development in specific areas that are, meet HCD's criteria and meet the city's climate goals for getting people out of their cars and be able to walk to services and transit, there will be additional incremental infill development. And this will occur in lower density neighborhoods throughout the city during the next housing element cycle due to relaxed state laws related to, accessory dwelling units, as well as recent implementation of Senate Bill 9, which allows for any single family lot in the city to be split into two and a duplex to be built on each of those lots as a ministerial process and subject to minimum setback and other standards. That law went into effect on January 1st of 2022, so just this year. The city has prepared frequently asked questions in an application form, and we have gotten many, many inquiries about it, but we've only received one application under Senate Bill 9. But if the ADUs, in our experience watching them sort of ramp up over the past few years is any indication, we will see more Senate Bill 9 applications. So the other draft chapter of the housing element under discussion tonight includes the housing plan, and that specifies policies, programs, and actions to be carried out in this 8-year cycle. And this ties into the housing needs, some of which Jason touched on tonight, as well as the inventory, trying to increase housing production, all housing production, but particularly housing production affordable to low, moderate, low, and very low income households, as well as special needs households. So the housing plan has a set of goals, policies, actions, objectives, timeframes, and then sets forth the responsible agency and funding source for achieving the action. There are 6 parts to our action plan. We have preserve, conserve, and improve existing housing, assist in the development of affordable housing, provide adequate housing sites, that ties to our arena, remove constraints on housing development, provide housing for persons with special needs, and equal housing opportunities for all persons. And underlying all of that is a strong purpose in ensuring fair housing is threaded through all of these goals and policies. So I'm just going to briefly touch on these. There are many, many actions in this attachment 3 to your staff report, but under preserve, conserve, and improve existing housing, we have actions that include like minor home repair, residential inspection, and preservation of at-risk affordable housing, which includes naturally occurring housing. Under assisting in the development of housing, we have sort of partnerships with affordable housing developers, updating our density bonus and inclusionary or affordable inclusionary housing ordinance, which has just kicked off, and housing choice actions related to housing choice vouchers, which are partnerships with the county. Under the provide adequate housing sites, so there are lots of actions, and these are typically required by HCD, just every jurisdiction is going to have this, is to show and monitor that there's no net loss in zoning to ensure that we continue to have adequate sites to meet our arena. Based on our analysis, we are not going to have an issue with this, but it's mainly about monitoring. That there are replacement housing requirements. So if someone comes in and wants to demolish naturally occurring affordable housing to build, let's say, market rate housing, there will be replacement housing requirements for those tenants. By right approvals on reused housing sites, that's about 3 housing sites. And that would just basically look like a SB 35 ministerial action. The city's processed a few of those in the past couple of years. Adaptive reuse policies for commercial buildings, and then allowing a variety of housing types to meet all the needs that we're seeing. Under the policy related to removing constraints, what we want to look at is a package of development incentives, ease for lot consolidation, expediting project review as much as possible, and that ties into those sort of ministerial approvals and updating our density bonus ordinance. And then monitoring and expanding ADU duplexes and lot split programs. What the city really wants to do, or what Hayward staff would like to do, is basically monitor ADU and SB 9 applications, see where they're happening, what are the constraints, who's doing them, and then how can we partner with county, state or federal, or even private funders to ensure that different populations have access to resources to be able to use these permits. And then under housing for persons with special needs, prioritize funding for affordable housing developments that serve special need populations. That would include, including priority on NOFAs for different types of housing that the city would fund, providing financial support to organizations that provide support in transitional services, developing a shallow rent subsidy program for extremely low income households to prevent homelessness, and then just ongoing community outreach and education to let people know that these services exist, how to access them, provide it in multiple languages, and provide it as much as possible out in the community. And then under equal housing opportunities for all persons, we're talking about foreclosure prevention and counseling, fair housing services, rent stabilization and tenant protections, relocation assistance, and then coordination with the consolidated plan. So the timeline where we are right now is summer of 2022. We do plan to publish the draft housing element in the next couple weeks. Following a 30-day public review, we will update the draft housing element based on those public comments and then submit the draft to HCD, who will take 90 days to review it, probably 89 and a half days. And then during that time, the city will conduct environmental review, finish up the safety element updates, the environmental justice element updates, and tie it all together. The climate action plan may lag a little bit, but we are really looking at ensuring all of these are tied together. So we're looking probably at winter, coming back with HCD comments and a revised housing element with public hearings at the Planning Commission and City Council. And community engagement will continue to occur throughout this process. It's been happening over the past year, and it will continue to occur even after adoption of the housing element as we go into implementation. So here's the cover. It's coming in July. And then these specific questions were included in the staff report. We would like to really focus the discussion on any questions about how the site's inventory was derived or about any of the specific sites, any questions about the policies and actions in the housing plan, and then any actions that you'd like to see expanded or added to the housing plan. Of course, we'll answer other questions and take other comments, but really want to focus on getting some information related to those questions. And with that concludes this presentation.
Thank you. So this is a work session, so I will go first to public comment. So if you're attending as a member of the public and you would like to make a comment, please raise your hand. And we do have some, so we will start with Kenneth Doe.
Oh, excuse me. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor Holliday and council members. My name is Kenneth Doe. I'm a field representative for NorCal Carpenters Union Local 713, representing 36,000 members in Northern California and approximately 1,000 members in Hayward. Housing element is great because it provides housing for all income levels and benefits the people that want to live and work in Hayward. However, before granting this approval, there needs to be some requirements for the housing element. A commitment to apprenticeship program to guarantee we have experienced workforce to complete high quality project in a safe and timely manner. A livable wage with medical and retirement benefits that allow workers and their families to live in the community they work in. This also means those wages will be reinvested back into the local community as they spend their earnings, and their tax dollars will help fund local schools and government. Projects that invest in apprenticeship, prevailing wage, healthcare are the best deals for workers and the community. We believe the housing element with the pre-qualification language will help ease the housing burden we all face. In closing, for all these reasons, the Carpenter urged the City of Hayward adopt these labor standards as a requirement for the housing element. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have Ro Aguilar.
Okay, I'm getting the hang of this.
We can hear you. Go ahead.
No, that's what I mean. I'm getting the hang of it. Anyway, instead of speaking about what I want, which you all know what I want because it's in writing and, numerous meetings related to the inclusionary affordable housing element, or I would like to ask the question of the council in terms of actions and policies. Do you feel that there is a need to increase home ownership opportunities for low-income people in Hayward? That is something we don't see spoken about very much. And I know that's indirectly involved, but I think that should be really highlighted because that is like looking through an equity lens at the whole housing issue. We know about the discrimination of the past. We know why various populations are not homeowners this day. We know why they're lacking in wealth. So I think it's important to state that in the housing, affordable housing element, that one of the goals is to provide housing opportunities for lower income people so they can gain housing ownership, they can build wealth, they can join the middle class, and that will benefit the city, the state, the country. So inclusion, in my mind, inclusionary affordable housing is one of the prime ways to go. And leaving it up to the developer to decide whether they want to do that or not is, I think, not a strong leadership path. So that's why I think we need an action plan, a policy that says we care about this issue and we are going to try to increase home ownership among the low income and help them join us in the middle class. That's where I'm coming from. I hope you agree. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And next, Warren Cushman.
Hold the Zoom webinar.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hello, Mayor and City Council. This is Warren Cushman, and I do have a couple of quick comments. I am totally blind, and my monthly income is $1,100 a month. Most blind people are unemployed. 70% of blind individuals are unemployed, so most of us are in that tier of income. The affordable housing piece and the housing element are very important to us, persons with disabilities. Overall, I am quite pleased with the community engagement piece of the Hayward housing element. I had an opportunity to engage with Leah and her team, and I found it to be engaging and a learning experience for me. I will just leave you today with some high-level thoughts. I will probably be back in future around this. I see this discussion through an equity lens, and I was also interested to hear comments from the gentleman who was speaking about the housing element through a labor lens. I hadn't thought of that before, and I think that's interesting. And so I would say that people with disabilities, like everyone else, we live everywhere. And so we do live in high density areas, but we also live in low density areas. We also need public transportation. We need pedestrian access. So there's a number of services and needs that we have throughout all areas, and would include the city of Hayward. So with that lens, I'd like to thank the team at Hayward and hope that the equity especially is looked at in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. And Elena Lepe.
Good afternoon, everyone, and good afternoon, Ms. Mayor and all council members. My name is Elena Lepe, and del Puente Comunitario. I work in the community all day. The issue more important is the housing. But I thank you for hard work, all team, and thank you for all presentation. So I like to see the more inclusion for all community. I like see the presentation for disabilities. It's very important. Disabilities, another person include 60 years more old. It's important. Another person for low income. Finally now I have a group person have navigated system for housing. For example, I have one group have the night housing. The land is destroyed maybe this year. Finishing negotiation now. It have priority that this person or person having disclosure or eviction or for example the owner sell the property. Please take in consideration this part of these members of the community. Thank you for all presentation. Thank you for consideration this part. Thank you for listening to the community and please listen our community and inclusion for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands raised among the public attendees, and there are none here in the chamber, so I'm going to go ahead and close public comment, and we'll go back to council for any questions or comments you have. And do remember that we were asked to address specifically those three questions that the staff put up there. Do we have any questions was one of the questions. And then, okay. So we'll go to, if we need reminding of the, Ms. Smith, why don't you just go ahead and tell us what those three questions were? Again, don't put the screen up because it's hard to see, but just remind us what they were.
Absolutely. One, we just want to know if you have any questions about the sites inventory, how it was derived, or any specific sites or areas. Do you have any questions about the policies and actions, or do you want to see specific policies and actions expanded or information added?
And then anything else, right, or that we want to add?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. Councilmember Salinas.
Thank you. Well, I was, so let me ask the first question about the inventory sites. Yeah, can you just explain more about that? How, in terms of how you arrived there and how you identified it? If you can just clarify that and so everyone knows what you're talking about.
Jason, do you want to talk about Hcd specific criteria, and then we can talk about Hayward specific?
Sure. So there's specific size and density criteria listed out in AB 1397. So for a site to be identified for lower income units, it needs to be, the density needs to accommodate at least 30 units per acre, and it needs to be between half an acre and 10 acres. So that's the sweet spot that HCD determined is a good site that affordable housing developers will see that site and want to develop affordable housing there. So we used that criteria and we looked at specific areas in the city, specifically high transit areas, and then areas where development is occurring. So if you remember the pipeline project map, the projects that are currently in the pipeline are occurring where we've identified the sites. And that happens to also be in an high transportation area. So good accessibility. So that kind of comes from a fair housing lens as well. So for the sites themselves, looking at sites that have residential zoning, high density residential zoning, and then sites that have an existing use that is either vacant, and vacant's great because there's no impediment with the existing use, or a use that is likely to be redeveloped. And we derived that from a list of other developments that have occurred in Hayward and looked at what's happening, what has happened in the last 8 years to kind of as a defense of this can realistically redevelop as part of the housing element. So, and a few other things we look at is structure age. So older structures are more likely to redevelop. Improvement to land value ratio, which is basically if the land is worth more than the structure that's on it, then that is a good indication that that site is underutilized. So that's a good site to include.
Okay.
So all of that was considered, a lot of GIS analysis to identify this site's inventory.
Okay, thank you. And I just wanted to get a little bit more context on this. So, you know, as you were talking and as I was, you know, listening to the report, I was also looking, and I know how do you put it, the low resource, I guess, low resource area. There's a lot of area, of course, that is west of Hesperian Boulevard, right? And as I look at that area, and that puts us in the industrial zone of the city. And several years ago, we generated catalyst sites that sort of went along Mission, down industrial, and then out towards the industrial zone. And my concern, or sort of the flag I want to put up, is I want us to be cautious of looking at these sites as potential housing sites while simultaneously taking away economic development, catalyst zone opportunities, if that makes sense. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Good, okay. So that's my concern. And I don't want, I'm even concerned about, encroaching, sort of incrementally encroaching that with doing mixed use. I mean, I'm a big proponent of mixed use, and I think many of us are up here. But my concern is that, especially in the west of the, Hesperian, where we are zoned for commercial, we are zoned specifically for commercial use, where we start to, sort of incrementally bring in more and more housing. I know there's housing out there off of West and off of Eden and, some of those areas behind Chabot and I guess west or east of Clawwitter. I understand that, but I'm just concerned about that, incrementally encroaching that. So I just want to sort of pin that note on that. The second, well, actually, I should ask Ms. Schmidt, do you understand what I'm saying? I mean, and do you have a response to that?
I actually do. I think
Okay.
I'm not 100% sure what you were looking at, but our RENA, the city's RENA that the city is proposing are opportunity sites, are none of them are west of Hesperian. I think you might have been looking at the planned and approved project, which is figure C2. And that does have a number of projects that are on that western side, although none are in the industrial area. And those include La Playa Commons, which is near, Southland Mall.
Yeah.
There is a 13-unit subdivision on Hesperian that I worked on in 2016. My gosh, it was so long. It was like a 13-unit subdivision right next to Chabot College. Those projects were approved. And they are in residential areas.
Yeah.
The sites that the city staff are recommending are entirely in the downtown specific plan, Mission Boulevard form-based code area, and the Caltrans 238 parcels. That doesn't mean other sites might not redevelop, like the sites that we talked about, La Playa Commons or the Hesperian site, but they're not identified on the RENA.
Yeah, and I'm also, as you're talking, I'm also thinking, the other, the other site where we took the, the old Burlington Coat Factory and we replaced that with housing. So, I just want us to be cautious of that, and I don't want us to do that, whether it's in the industrial zone or, east of Hesperian. I just want us to be cautious about that. And
So that, I mean, she did mention that's La Playa.
Yeah.
That was, did we change the zoning on that when we approved the housing? Was that zoned commercial? Do you remember, Ms. Schmidt?
The general plan designation, it was a rezoning to PD, but the general plan designation allowed for a mix. Oh no, it was a general plan amendment and zone change. Yes, it was a full land use change.
Okay. All right.
On that Burlington Coat Factory site.
Yeah, okay, all right. So I just want to, just cautious as that. I mean, I know, so I just want us to be cautious of that. Secondly, I just wanted to respond to a couple things. To Ro Aguilar, I really appreciate her calls and her comments, and I know she always, her two central themes every call, every email is, increasing the inclusionary housing percentage, and then the other one is increasing the opportunities for low-income families to buy a home. I don't think you're going to find anyone up here that disagrees with that. And, and I know there's a lot of formulas in terms of, there's all these formulas around increasing, inclusionary housing percentages, and, they're very complex, and they change from project to project, but I guess the point I want to make and the comment I want to make is, yes, we hear you, Ms. Aguilar. I think every project we think about those. And we do, we are doing our best up here. You may or may agree, but we do our best. And in terms of, now I know that the city, we have a general policy of a project labor agreement policy in general, but should we and would it behoove us to include in this specific and explicit language promoting and just, articulating, our longstanding policy of project labor agreements, hiring local anytime there's a development and so forth. Should we, is that something we should include in this plan?
Councilmember Salinas, if you don't mind, if I could answer that. I think the city attorney and I would like to actually have some conversations and do some research. Given the new state laws and the Housing Accountability Act, there may be some challenges with including language like that. So we'd like to just do some further research and have some further discussions. And just to clarify, the project labor agreement only applies to public projects, public works projects. I think the risk we always run is there's a balance to be struck with developing housing and the cost of developing housing. And so I think the council needs to be very cognizant of the potential conflict between, our goals of having and supporting good paying jobs, health benefits, apprenticeships with the cost of developing housing. So I think that's something that we are looking at, doing some financial feasibility studies to share with the council so that the council can further understand what the economics of these projects look like. And then we can be having further conversations about that. But first and foremost, the city attorney and I need to do some additional research on the points that were raised.
You do raise a good point, and thank you for bringing that up, Madam City Manager. And what I was thinking about were the possibilities, or in the event that there are publicly funded developments or developments that we contribute to, that we can sort of think about that. But I'll let you and the city attorney sort of think that through and then come back to us with a comment. So I get that. Lastly, I want to just see. Let me go back up here to the housing plan. Under the category of assist in the development of affordable housing, you know, one of the things I just want to highlight is, you know, Cal State is expanding. Enrollments are growing, and I'd like for us to continue to, you know, look at, you know, how we can, you know, work with Cal State, work with Chabot around, you know, housing, building housing, you know, helping, you know, these two campuses, you know, whether it's exploring opportunities for housing or just partnering them with creative solutions to housing for students. I don't want us to lose sight of that, and I don't want us to let that go, because I know that that's, you know, on any given day in the city of Hayward, there's, you know, 60,000 students who go to school in the city. So, so I just want to make sure that that stays at the top of our minds. Lastly, I just wanted to thank, you know, Leah Schmidt and her team. You guys were out there. I saw you on weekends. I saw you at parks. I saw you in, you know, in school multi-purpose rooms. I saw you at grocery store, you know, in front of grocery stores. I've seen you. You know, I think your team really went out there and were very deliberate and intentional in terms of engaging with the community and getting feedback. And so when I look at all of the input, you know, clearly we're getting some really good input. And I know the process isn't over. There'll be more opportunities to provide input, but I just wanted to thank you and your staff for really going out there and engaging the community. That's it. Thank you. Thank you.
Are there any other council members who would like to make comments on this issue? Councilmember Marquez.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you to Leah and the consultant for your comprehensive report. I appreciate you really meeting people where they're at. So thank you for those efforts. And also to the callers, thank you for caring about this issue and sharing your input. The report is extremely comprehensive. I had read it in advance and I didn't highlight my notes, but what I'm not easily finding, and if you could answer this for me, where are we at with updating our inclusionary housing ordinance? I believe that was something that was going to be looked at through the Housing and Homelessness Committee, but has that subject come up again?
I'll jump in and just tell you, I think, I don't know if others are on the phone. I know Amy is working on this. I do believe that a consultant was hired and that they started that process within the past few weeks.
Okay.
But the housing division is really heading that one up.
Okay. Okay. So if there are changes there, that would determine in terms of affordability on site versus collecting the in lieu fee. So that could potentially have an impact on not what we have to allocate for arena numbers, but what can potentially be built. Is that accurate based on?
Correct. It'll change the ordinance, but the arena sites are based on zoning.
Okay.
HCD says if a site is zoned 30 units per acre, you can count it, you know, and so they do tie together, but just because we identified a site as affordable doesn't mean it'll be affordable. It's just, it meets HCD's requirement.
Okay. And so I guess that's what I'm conflicted with, because I feel like we've identified sites in the past, we have these RENA projections, but legally, is there anything the city could do when a lot of these projects haven't even been developed? You mentioned like, you know, approving projects or working on projects, you know, over a decade ago. So what can the city do to address that? Do we have any?
I mean, the city has no leverage in the private development market. I mean, and that's the inherent conflict with the state saying, city, you must show that you can produce all these housing units, and then penalizing us because the housing units don't get produced. There are so many other I mean, the city and its zoning is only one small factor, as I just talked about, you know, costs, construction costs, residual land value. There's so many different factors that go into the actual production of housing. I don't, other than creating more incentives to produce housing, and lowering costs, there's really not a lot that the council can do to sort of mandate that projects get built.
Okay. And then with regard to identifying the specific sites, you had mentioned Mission Corridor, the 238 land, and downtown area. And within downtown, I think there was mention of city-owned property, which are parking lots. So I am very reluctant, as much as I want housing. Parking is a very much needed commodity in our community. So I think we need to be creative and look at density going up near transportation would be my preference. I'm wondering if outside the city, if we looked at property owned by like BART that's vacant, I could think of a lot on Montgomery and B Street. So are we looking at other land owned by other jurisdictions other than the city of Hayward?
Oh, the BART sites are on there.
They are on there.
The BART sites are on there, yes.
Okay.
Both in South Hayward and downtown.
Including their parking lots, like the Grand Street parking
ultimately, yeah. Well, we've seen BART redevelop parking lots and either shift or put parking in structures.
Okay. So yeah, I'm in support of expanding that. Just making sure that we're not just looking at city property, other entities, that's going to be key. And then what are the issues with looking more on the west side of town? Do we have conflicts with the airport? There's tons of parking at Southland Mall. There's lots of, I'm just assuming there would be conflicts with the airport, but are those areas being considered as well?
There are portions of Southland Mall that are kind of off limits because of height restrictions and population density restrictions. It's not the entire mall. And Sarah Bowser and I have spoken to many, many developers about that. What is important to note is that the city identifying sites in RENA doesn't preclude development on other sites. As we saw in the last housing element cycle, there were a number of sites that were not identified at all that came in and actually have construction on them. What the city is doing is what the law requires us to do, which is show HCD that we have adequately zoned sites to accommodate our RENA. The truth is we could accommodate many more times our RENA, but we're gonna show them we can accommodate our RENA, and so that's the job of the housing element. We don't have to identify every potentially developable site. We just have to show we can meet the allocation.
Okay. And then so is there any type of monitoring? We're demonstrating we have the land to meet the needs of the RENA numbers and the different income levels. But at what point do they come back and review where are we at with our targets? And are cities penalized for not meeting the targets? Like, what's the follow-up to this, identifying the land?
Yeah, one of the actions actually is monitoring the known net loss. So I sort of mentioned that. So on an annual basis, we'll identify our sites. If the city identified it as 100% affordable and it became market, then the city would have to say to HCD, oh, okay, so one of our sites that we said would be affordable is now going to be market rate. But we are showing a known net loss because we have all these other sites. Remember, we have a 50% buffer. So we can show our RENA plus 50%. So we'll sort of start pulling sites over through the 8-year cycle. And the truth is we have a B list of sites. we have enough sites that are zoned adequately. And that's because almost according to the city's general plan, mixed use development is allowed on every commercial site. It doesn't necessarily replace the commercial aspect, but it's permitted. And some other jurisdictions struggle with that. And so I think that they would have a bit more difficulty with that no net loss. But that is an action, is that we would monitor it and ensure that there's adequate sites throughout the 8-year cycle.
Okay. And then I'm not convinced as to how we can factor the ADUs, because how do we verify someone's income level? That's a conflict for me. I'm not quite sure how that would work.
That's a really good question. Jason, do you want to step in and explain that Alameda County had a study that we based this on? So
Yeah, I think it's the Turner Center came out with a ADU income analysis for the ABAG region, and it was blessed by HCD. So basically, so our ADU analysis, it takes the permitted, it looks at the permitted ADUs between 2018 and 2021, and it takes the average, that average number, and then it extrapolates it over the 8-year cycle. And that's how we reached our ADU numbers. And for the income category for each specific one, that is based on this report that was put together that was blessed by HCD. So it's acceptable to HCD to use these kind of, I think it's 15%. It's in the resources section. It talks about, it references, I think it links to the study, and it breaks down by income category.
Okay, and then to get to one of Rose's comments with regard to home ownership, do we have an update from I believe it was the A1 housing bond? Do we know how many people, if you don't have the answer right now, that's okay, but if we could get this maybe in the future, how many people from Hayward actually qualified for, I think it was Boost, like the down payment assistance program, just trying to figure out, and aside from that, are we tracking through the ARPA funds and just all these other funding mechanisms we've had in the last couple of years, have we been able to target those dollars towards increasing home ownership in Hayward? Do we track that at all, City Manager?
I'm guessing our housing staff probably have those statistics, but I don't know that we've compiled it in sort of a report format. We can look into that and see if we can produce a report for council, just in terms of housing production and then access to, the A1 funds and the down payment assistance and all of those other available funds.
Okay. And then Leah, you had questions specifically to policies. Is there a specific page on the staff report that you wanted us to respond to?
no, it was just a general question saying like, it wasn't specific.
Okay. So that was my only concern, was about the ADU, but the explanation, I'm satisfied with that. Those are all my comments for now. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Wahab.
Thank you. So, specifically, I did want to ask, I know I just heard our city manager state that, we don't have any real governance over private construction. But, with an ordinance, we pretty much have governance over anything, number one. But I just wanted to ask, how can we ensure that, let's say, if a development over, let's say $1 million, $500,000, something, includes some type of effort to include, union members working on those projects?
Again, that's something that the city attorney and I would like to discuss a little further and do some research as to how that might conflict with the recently adopted Housing Accountability Act and the requirement of cities to approve housing. So if it's a housing project, I think that's, again, we just need to do some further analysis on that and the impacts.
Okay. And if we are going to research it, just making sure that we, to the best of our ability, also include language about livable wages or something, even if we are not necessarily including a full PLA on a housing project, but some of the language that is requested, right? Whether it's local hire, whether it's, wages, whether it's, some of the comments that were made earlier tonight. So I would like to see that. I did want to ask you guys about the AMI. The only concern I have about the AMI is because Hayward residents, when I was first elected, I think it was like about 65,000 for median family income. At this point, it's about 85,000, still significantly lower than the AMI for, I'm going to say Alameda County. And then there are individuals who make more than the AMI, but still cannot afford to purchase a home, right? What else are we doing there to ensure that we are prioritizing home ownership for the various. So there's that middle income, which is, usually they get paid and they're paid probably more than AMI. And then there's the below AMI, making sure, one, we prioritize that, and two, it's housing units, in my opinion, of appropriate and dignified size, right? So I'm not the biggest fan of tiny homes and much more, but are we going beyond this as a city?
Well, there is an action, there are policies around homeownership under Goal 2, which is assist in the development of affordable housing. So, policy H2, we do encourage the development of ownership housing and assisting tenants to become homeowners. And then through inclusionary housing, if a project has for sale units, then they are required through the affordable housing ordinance to deed restrict a certain number of them. The income levels, though, are tied to the AMI of the Alameda County. Even though as you absolutely correctly pointed out, in Hayward, the incomes are slightly lower than the Alameda County in general, but they're going up. So there are definitely homeownership opportunities built into this as policies and actions, and through the affordable housing ordinance would really be the way to do that, unless the city had funding streams to subsidize market rate housing, which all the funding streams that I know about are subsidizing affordable and special needs housing.
Okay. And the reason why this is important is because I think that, as much as we focus on AMI, we exclude a lot of people, and even people that are semi-ready to purchase a home, maybe their first home, and they don't necessarily hit the limits, either below the AMI or they're slightly above the AMI. So it's that particular piece is actually really bothersome. So as much as possible, I think we should go above and beyond this, right? There's the county standard, but then I think we need to kind of go beyond that. I also want to highlight the minor home repair program that you guys have. How minor are we talking about?
I believe the grants are about $10,000.
But would we be able to cover a roof repair or?
A roof repair, yes. A lot of these are used to, for weatherproofing, sustainability, repairs, accessibility. So if homeowners want to make their housing more accessible.
Yeah, water leaks or plumbing upgrades, things like that, where people.
What about earthquake? Because putting in that beam, whether it's a duplex or a triplex, is a little bit more costly than this, but they're also considered small mom and pop, if you will, if they're under 4 units or less. Like, you don't have to have the criteria right now, but I'm just saying, if we're thinking about criteria, that is something that I'm very much interested in to just make sure that we have things for these smaller mom and pops, right? Because a water heater is about 10 Gs, right? If we talk about brand new and installation, the whole, time served and stuff like that, installing it. And then I do just want to highlight rental markets. So as the economy is kind of, I'm going to say, tank a little bit in the sense of inflation and uncertainty and all the fun stuff that we're seeing in the news, rents are still going up, right? Rents are going up. There's also private firms that are purchasing the multifamily complexes. Rents are going up year over year over year over year, regardless of the economy, right? And I find that incredibly problematic. And I do just want to do a little bit more work around the rental housing aspects of things. One, do we have these? I personally think we do have monopolies in the city of Hayward, and granted, monopolies are dictated a different way, legally, but we do have that, right? And if there's anything that we can do about that, making sure, who owns it, how many do they own, what are they doing, when they increase the rent, are they increasing the rent on all of their properties, and much more. So I think that's extremely concerning to me, especially as we move forward. I know that we also, and the housing group is actually focused on this, but the evictions, right? There's still a significant concern around evictions and what that actually looks like. So I think there's a couple of things that I'd like to take a look at, and then also, you know, preservation of at-risk affordable housing. What specifically would you be covering in that?
So there's a program and policy. So the sites that we have 5 projects that within the 8-year cycle are probably they're gonna term out of the affordable housing. So those 5 projects are identified, and there are specific actions that the city can take to go to those owners and the owners of those developments and see if maybe they want to do to upgrade them, to take more money in exchange for continuing the deed restrictions. So there are definitely specific actions related to preservation of at-risk affordable housing. There are also specific actions related to naturally occurring affordable housing, looking at the NOFA to preserve those units. So those are not necessarily housing units that are going to come up in the next housing cycle, and their 45-year or 50-year or whatever term is not going to expire, but they're just naturally occurring affordable housing. And so those are handled by the housing division, and those actions are included.
Okay. And the one thing that I feel like I did not really see kind of elaborated here was those individuals that, you know, own a home and potentially may lose it, you know, especially as the economy is, you know, questionable right now and you see layoffs already starting, you know, just the eviction situation. I know that we are looking to purchase homes from the assessor's office and, you know, do something with that, right? That program hasn't, you know, in my opinion, hasn't been fully fleshed out here, right? As a genuine policy stance. And granted, we don't have to buy every single home that's offered from the assessor, but it's not a lot. It's like about 30 homes, you know, per year based on what I've seen, right? Just making sure that, you know, the people that live in these homes remain in these homes as much as possible. So I do think that there's 2 pieces. One, the potential eviction crisis that may be happening, right, as we've seen in the past. And then number 2, just, you know, really enforcing the aspect of the assessor's option and, you know, those who have already kind of, you know, tax liens and all that stuff. The other pieces, we did go over density bonuses and stuff like that on the housing committee, so I'm not going to repeat myself there, but I do think that that's important. And, you know, I find it a little bit troublesome, kind of the zoning that you guys mapped out, right? Maybe, you know, I'm probably not 100% fully aware of how this was done. But, you know, for example, I always talk about where the side that I live, which is mostly closer to the Hesperian side. It doesn't have as much action in regards to development, in regards to attention, in regards to things like that. However, on the border from San Lorenzo side, which is the unincorporated, there's a significant amount of development happening that I do think that we should be also turning our attention to these areas that are like the lighter shade greens, if you will, right? Because there is potential. Yes, it is kind of around the airport zone as well. But as much as possible, I do think that when we talk about, you know, what are we going to do with this? You know, how much is this land worth? You know, is there potential at a higher level? It should be done with an equity lens. And I did not necessarily see that on these maps, right? As to, you know, what is the other attention in other areas, or what is the plan for these particular different sections of the map, if you will. Okay, so the other piece is SB 9 is concerning. I've mentioned this multiple times in the committee, the Homeless and Housing Task Force. If we are looking to have people upzone, you know, making sure that it is the ADU or the secondary property is marked for affordable or for their family, that individual SB 9, you know, the owner is required to live on the property, which is great, but making sure that we are creating affordable housing. Now, some folks, and I've had debates about this, they believe that that regulates the monetization of these properties, but it's important to do that because, again, we don't want to create slums in the flatlands and, larger single family lots in the larger pieces of land, if you will, up in the hills. I do hope that we can kind of expedite a lot of the plans for ADUs, for development, for things like that. Specifically, if we can just have blueprints already created, what can we streamline? How fast can we move? If there is a target from initial presentation of this is my concept to final approval, how long that takes, because we do get a significant amount of emails saying that they're still waiting on approvals, right? So that's more of a planning, I guess, process as much as possible if we can kind of do that. And then, what do you potentially see as a rent stabilization and tenant protections addition to what we already have?
Basically continuing what the housing division is doing and then expanding it as they see fit. There's not these actions and programs are really tied into the strategic plan and the housing production plans that the council has already looked at.
Okay. If we looked at it at a time where, let's say the economy is going well, are you guys going to potentially look at it again or bring it forward if something is not working?
I won't speak for the housing division, but I would assume that any division in the city, if it wasn't working, would be looking to pivot and update the way that the city is working on updating the affordable housing ordinance right now, which was adopted in 2017.
Okay. And
Councilmember Wahab, we would also be looking at the number of sort of complaints from tenants, complaints from tenants' rights groups, sort of the number of evictions, and I think the housing staff track all of that now to just see where we are with everything.
Okay, and then with that database that I think a couple of years ago I asked if we can kind of keep track of those numbers, right? Are we able to have a yearly report on that, even if it's informational or if it's in a paragraph of some housing item, just making sure that it's at the top of everybody's mind? So for example, Councilmember Marquez has asked for the RENA numbers to be presented every so often, either on a staff report or something. I think we should do the same with complaints, with evictions, with housing, cost increases, and specifically around the rental market in particular, because that's the most unstable. Other than that, I do appreciate, I didn't have anything specifically for the three questions that you have. But again, I do appreciate the work. I also appreciate the PowerPoint, easy to follow, nice and colorful. So thank you for that. And then, I just kind of wanted to understand our numbers that were allocated to us for these increased numbers, right? Do you feel like it's low?
Relative to other jurisdictions' allocations? Are you asking?
Relative, here's the thing. Hayward is still growing. It's growing in economy, right? The economics of individual families, as we discussed, it has been growing regardless. There are more people moving. The population size is growing on a number of different levels. I felt like when I first saw it, I felt like it was a little low. I know it's also hard to build this much housing, but at the same time, in an 8-year plan, I think it was a little low. My personal opinion. What do you think?
I think relative to other jurisdictions, our allocation didn't increase as much as other jurisdictions did. It definitely went up. It went up across the state, but some other jurisdictions increased 100-fold percentage increases from the last cycle, and ours was less than 20%.
Okay, and I think one of the things that was mentioned in the housing task force was height. If we can, across the board, increase height, I think that, when we talk about 3 stories or 2 stories, I think those are too low, right? And if we are building out for the next almost 10 years, it should be, we should be looking at roughly 10 stories, right? And then, again, parking is super important to me. I think I've been kind of harping, I'm a driver, so, hence parking is important. Making sure all new developments is environmentally friendly as much as possible, as much as we are moving this way. And again, I still believe that the units of those rooms and those particular units being created need to have some dignity for a person to truly live, have a living room, invite people over, and quality of life is increased. So those are my comments, and I do appreciate your effort here.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Lamnon.
Thank you. So yeah, I will add my appreciation for the community and council requests that I see reflected in these draft documents, and really the care and thoughtful approach and really dedicated outreach that's happened thus far and is continuing with this project. I'm so excited about all of that. So kudos to Leah and to the team that have been working on all of that. I think, this is another example of where we can acknowledge progress. The amount of affordable housing that's been created because it had a lot of attention. Council dedicated that, led by Councilmember Marquez, who flagged that much earlier than the rest of the council, and appreciate that. So to Ms. Lepe's point earlier, we have been listening, and there's some really good work reflected in this report. To your questions, I don't have any questions about how the inventory was derived or the individual sites, except for the Chevrolet site. I had sent in a question about that, and I did see the preliminary response. I don't know if you heard anything additional back from economic development about that site?
I haven't, no.
Okay. So, to Councilmember Salinas' point earlier about hesitation, protecting our industrial commercial sites, that's the one site that gave me pause. I appreciated that actually parcel group 9 wasn't in your list. I thought that was since we don't know specifically what's going to go there yet, I appreciated that kind of wasn't there. That really I saw your focus on housing and mixed use. It was just the Chevrolet one that gave me a little pause. And sort of the trade-off I might offer, and you probably already considered this, but I'll ask it anyway, is the site in front of Chabot College that has been vacant for a really long time. Is that something that could be included in the site? Is it in front of Chabot College, and anybody can give better explanation, but it fronts Hesperian. There's just this big open space. Has it been developed?
I'm almost positive the general plan is not set to allow for residential development, so it would require a general plan amendment. So HCD.
Yeah. I think it is. It's zoned for agriculture, and there's historic resource on the site with the farmhouse. There's some real complications with that site.
Thank you. Thank you for that. No, it's a private, which is part of the problem. So it's sort of one of those stuck sites, which is why I brought it up, but I appreciate the clarification about the restrictions on it. Thank you. Sorry about that. I sent in a bunch of questions earlier, so I appreciate that you've looked at those in terms of proposed policies and actions and potential expansions. And I was just trying to see, I think all of the questions that I had as sort of follow-up you've already answered, so I'll leave it at that for now. I know we're going to look at this some more, so thank you so much.
All right, thank you. So good comments from everyone, and I hope that you got good information. I just want to say about the numbers themselves that, yes, Hayward's, all of the numbers increased throughout the state. Hayward's increases were lower than some other jurisdictions, and I like to think that reflects that we have been building houses in all of the various income levels, not just market rate, even though all of us have an easier time getting the market rate build. I do sit on the ABAG executive board, and ABAG was the agency that heard appeals from the cities in our metropolitan area. I did not sit on the appeal committee, but we had I can't remember the exact number, but it was dozens of appeals from cities throughout this region about their numbers, wanting their numbers lowered. And some of them were, just some quarrels about specific areas, or why they couldn't accomplish this based on what the land use was designated as. But we did not object to our numbers. Our planning staff did not object to the numbers that we got. You have shown us that we can build those numbers. I mean, that we have land. That's all you have to show. The other side of it is money. Why don't we do this? Why don't we have more affordable? We all want to have, and we have promoted ownership housing for low-income families, opportunities for that, but we have a lot of trouble getting it funded. And the state, in all its infinite wisdom, 11 years ago now, eliminated redevelopment agencies, and therefore we lost, as a state, probably into the billions of dollars that could have been dedicated to housing assistance, building affordable housing, helping provide those home ownership opportunities. And when the legislatures are passing all these and putting it all on cities, we don't build housing, we zone for housing. We work with developers, we permit housing, but we are not developers. We have to depend on the development community coming to us. And I think we're actually, a pretty easy city to work with, and we're definitely not a NIMBY city, and I'm not just lauding the council here and what the council has done, but our community is not a NIMBY community, and we have people like Ro Aguilar and some of the other speakers tonight. When we have hearings like this, we don't have people telling us, no, don't build more, higher density housing, we don't want it here. So I'm very proud of Hayward from that standpoint. We just need to find the funding. And I think, to answer Ms. Aguilar's question, I think all of us are in support of trying to find a way to provide more homeowner ownership opportunities. I think it's an issue that addresses the inequities that come from the discrimination in the past. And I think when the state talks about reparations, I'm hoping that some money comes forward from the state on that, along those lines, because that would be a true way to try to compensate for that. It won't go individual by individual, but, it would help to compensate for the inequities that caused that to be the situation in the first place. And a big issue is what we do with our commercial sites, because, and this is where I do part company with the state sometimes about, housing needs neighborhood serving commercial development to support it. And so we can't, and Councilmember Salinas brought that up, we cannot give those opportunities up, because we need commercial, neighborhood serving commercial, and we need better transportation options, so we don't have to devote so much space to parking. And those are issues that we're working on, and so that we need to keep working on them. Southland, unlike other cities that have big shopping malls like Southland that could be converted into higher height, and kind of the Santana Row model of housing over commercial, we are limited in what we can do there. But as Ms. Schmidt pointed out, not completely limited, and there may be opportunities over there. And I really think the Sears site, we need to make some efforts with, what are they doing there? It's, it's an eyesore right now, and how long are they gonna leave it that way? Okay, I know I mentioned how good we are and we're not always objecting, but we do have an issue. And it's not just our issue in Hayward, it's a statewide issue, and especially it's somewhat of a regional issue, and that is water supply. We're facing some difficult issues regarding the availability of our own water supply coming up. And it's a battle that pits environmental concerns against, the need for urban water supply. And I'd ask you, I think that needs to be mentioned, that You know, our water supply is, you know, perhaps under attack, or, you know, perhaps we will be more limited in the future due to some state decisions. And, you know, we are also a strongly environmental city. So, I mean, I don't know how you balance those two, but it is an issue. And I think maybe that's what I would suggest, is that there be some addressing of that issue in this housing element. But I will look forward to more opportunities for us to comment as you proceed. And I was wondering, what is your timeline for perhaps final adoption of the new housing element, since it's due in early 2023?
Yes, the goal is to get it to the state by January 31st, 2023.
January 31st, so we might be actually adopting it in January, huh?
That's the hope, yes.
Okay, well, then maybe I'll be on the other side of this podium coming and talking about it at that time. but yeah, well, we get it done when we can get it done, and, you know, can't accommodate everybody's desire to be here to help pass it. But anyway, really good work so far. And again, I have to say, from having the perspective of seeing what other cities are doing and saying, I'm really proud of Hayward for being a city, you know, not just our council, but our you know, our residents as well, who really advocate for the right things and helping everybody to achieve some kind of housing. And we're working on it. And I think you did a good job of laying those sites out and satisfying the state requirements. So thank you. And with that, we will move on to our final items of this evening. Item number 23 is a public hearing on the lighting and landscaping assessment districts. So I will turn this over now to our Maintenance Services Director, Mr. Rollman. Is he with us?
I am. Thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. I would like to actually introduce Kyle Tankard with SCI Consulting. He will be presenting tonight's item, and he'll be sharing his screen with you.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Kyle Tankard, Senior Consultant with SCI Consulting Group. So this evening, I will be presenting 3 public hearing reports for the city's 3 assessment districts. The Landscape and Lighting Assessment District 96-01, Maintenance District number 1, and Maintenance District number 2. So each year, under the requirements of Proposition 218, the city is required to go through a multi-step process in order to continue to levy the assessments for the upcoming fiscal year. So at the June 21st, 2022 City Council meeting, the council completed the first step of this process by reviewing the preliminary engineers reports for these 3 assessment districts and adopting resolutions number 22-158, -159 and -160, which declared the council's intention to continue the assessments for fiscal year 2023 and provided notice of tonight's public hearings for each of these 3 assessment districts. So tonight, council is required to conduct these 3 notice public hearings. After taking any comments from the public, the council may close these public hearings and take final action by approving the final engineer's report, setting the assessment rates, and ordering the continuation and levy of the assessments for fiscal year 2023 with the approval of those resolutions. So this is the final step in the annual process for levying the assessments for inclusion on the property tax bills. So tonight I will provide a brief overview of the 3 assessment districts, the proposed annual assessment rates for the upcoming fiscal year, and how the assessment rates are determined each year. So first, starting with item 23 on the agenda, We have public hearing 22-040 for the city's consolidated landscape and lighting assessment district. So within the city of Hayward, there are 18 separate landscape and lighting zones. Each year, the annual assessments collected by the city provides the funding for the maintenance and servicing of landscaping, lighting, parks, and other improvements within these zones. So each zone has a separate budget pertaining to its respective improvements that are maintained by the city, which are detailed in the annual engineer's report. So this next slide provides some examples of the types of improvements that the city maintains within each of these zones. So depending on the zone, this could range from setback landscaping, street lights, irrigation systems, and various park improvements. So as I previously mentioned, the city has 18 separate landscape and lighting zones. So the table on this slide details the location of each zone, when the assessment zone was formed, and the number of assessed parcels in each zone. So next, I would like to talk about the proposed assessment rates for each of the zones for fiscal year 2023. So each year, the city goes through a process to develop a budget for each of the zones. The city looks at anticipated annual expenses, the required cash flow needed for the upcoming year, and the capital replacement requirements for the year, as well as the current fund balance for each of the zones. And then depending on that estimated budget, the city calculates the annual assessment rate to pay for the services and improvements. And as required by law, the annual assessment rates cannot exceed the maximum base assessment rate, which is shown in column E of this table. Column F shows the proposed annual assessment rates for fiscal year 2023. So for zones 2, 4 through 9, 14, 15, and 17, the assessment rates will be the same as last year, and they will not increase this year. And for zones 1, 3, 10 through 13, and 16, the assessment rates will slightly increase this year by 3%. Zone 18 is a special case here since it's one of the city's newer zones. This zone is currently under construction, which is expected to be completed soon. And once that happens, the city will take full responsibility of the cost of maintaining the Sohei Park from the developer. So this is why the assessment rate is increasing from $50 to $300 this year. Which is still well below the maximum rate of $430 that could be charged. So this concludes my presentation and overview for the first item, the Landscape and Lighting Assessment District. So at this time, council may open the public hearing, take any questions from the public, and after the public hearing is closed, council may take action on the 2 resolutions which approves the final engineer's report and orders the levying of assessments for fiscal year 2023 and appropriates the fiscal year 2023 budget for this assessment district.
Okay. So let me first ask if there are any council questions. I'm not seeing any hands raised. So we will open the public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to address the council on this item, either among attendees or in the, okay. Madam City Clerk, you're not aware of anyone trying to make a public comment on this item?
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close public comment. Entertain council comments and a motion. Councilmember Salinas?
I move this item.
And
I'll second it, but we're going to move it with the amended resolution, correct?
We got
an amendment.
I didn't. I didn't.
Yeah, I believe it was just changing the assessment. I think it's at zone 14. Is that correct, Todd or Kyle?
Yeah. So for zone 14, there was an error for the assessment rate for zone 14. So that was reduced from, I believe, $704 down to 600 and bear with me one second.
Which zone was it?
14.
Yes. So it was reduced from $704.16 down to $683 and 65 cents, which was the rate last year.
Oh, okay, and it does say that there's no change when there was okay, good catch, whoever caught that. Thank you. Yeah, so you're...
In the spirit of no change, I move the item.
In the spirit, but meaning you do, yes, okay, you do agree with the new resolution, and you have second. Okay, so the motion has been made by Councilmember Salinas, seconded by Councilmember Lamnin, I will again ask if there are any other council members who wish to weigh in. I'm not seeing any hands raised, so Madam City Clerk, would you please call the roll for the vote?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Andrews? Absent. Councilmember Lamnin?
Aye.
Councilmember Marquez?
Aye.
Councilmember Salinas?
Yes.
Councilmember Wahab?
Yes.
Councilmember Cermeño?
I think he is not any longer with us on Zoom. I mean, he's
it
still
appears
somewhere.
he's no longer. Yeah.
He was attending remotely, so he may have had problems.
Okay, so absent. Mayor Halliday?
Yes, and the motion carries with 5 aye votes and 2 members absent. Great. Okay, now we'll move right along to item number 24, which is regarding Maintenance District Number 1, which is the storm drain pumping station and storm drain conduit on Pacheco Way and Stratford Road and Roos Lane. So, Mr.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Tankard, yes.
Mr. Tankard, yeah. Yeah, so the annual assessments for Maintenance District Number 1 funds the maintenance and servicing of the stormwater lift station in the Stratford Village neighborhood, which pumps stormwater collected from the stormwater drainage system into Ward Creek and helps prevent this neighborhood from flooding. So the fiscal year 2023 assessment for MD1 is $243.92, which is the same assessment rate as last year and is also the maximum assessment rate that can be charged for this district. As some of you may recall, last year, a Proposition 218 balloting was conducted to increase this assessment rate for this district, and that effort was unsuccessful. So as a result, you'll notice that this district remains underfunded and is projected to have a negative fund balance for the upcoming year. So to ensure the district's account doesn't carry this negative balance moving forward beyond fiscal year 2023, staff is looking into the possibility of a loan from the Stormwater Fund to ensure that the baseline maintenance and operation functions continue until this funding shortage has been resolved. In addition, city staff plans on holding some additional focus groups within the Stratford Village community that will inform the future plans and the long-term fiscal stability of the district. So again, this concludes my presentation for the second item for Maintenance District Number 1. So at this time, the City Council may open the public hearing and take action on the 2 resolutions.
All right, first I'll ask if there are any council questions. Seeing no hands going up, either here or on Zoom, I'm going to open the public hearing. on this item? Is there any member of the public who wishes to make a comment on this item? Not seeing any hands going up. There's no one left in the council chambers, and not seeing any. Okay, so I will close the public hearing on this item and entertain again a motion. Yes, Councilmember Salinas.
It is my honor and privilege to move this item.
Thank you. Who would like to second the motion?
I'll second, Mayor.
Okay. We will entertain a second from Councilmember Marquez. Okay. Anyone wish to make any comments? No comments. There weren't any changes in this one. I will comment that this is a very frustrating situation that we've had around for a few years now. And at some point, the people who live in this development need to understand that this is an obligation, that it's there to protect their homes, and they have refused to pass an increase, and they are now in debt. The district is in debt to the county. I don't know what the county is going to do about that, but at some point, there may even need to be action taken to make an assessment on the properties, because it's a large debt now, $500,000, I think is, and that might be an idea that, if the county insists on collecting that debt, but it is very frustrating that people in this area do not understand, that they need to pay for this. But nevertheless, there's not much we can do about it. They did not approve the Prop 218 tax measure that the last time we put it on last year. So I don't think we have any alternative here. So on the motion by Councilmember Salinas, seconded by Councilmember Marquez, Madam City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Andrews, absent. Councilmember Lamnin?
Aye.
Councilmember Marquez?
Aye.
Councilmember Salinas?
Yes.
Councilmember Wahab?
Yes.
Councilmember Cermeño? Absent. Mayor Halliday?
Yes, and the motion carries with 5 aye votes and 2 members absent. Well, we're moving right along now. We've come to item number 25, Maintenance District Number 2 public hearing. So this is regarding the Eden Shores stormwater buffer and facilities, and the assessment for this coming fiscal year. Mr. Tankard, are you up on this one again too?
I am, yes. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Maintenance District Number 2, the annual assessments fund the maintenance of the water buffer channel, the stormwater pretreatment pond, masonry walls, and anti-predator fences, which are located along the western side of the development, which you can see in this figure on the top left of this slide. For fiscal year 2023, the assessments for MD2 will increase by 5% this year, from $228.79 to $240.22 to pay for the maintenance and repair of the anti-predator fence, which has developed a few holes in some of the sections of the fence, and also to pay for the maintenance and repair of the pumps, which are responsible for circulating the water in the water buffer. In addition to the slight increase this year, as you look at the budget, a portion of that funding will be taken out of the reserve account balance to pay for some of those repairs. So this concludes my presentation for the third item. So similar to the last two, council may proceed with opening the public hearing and taking action on the 2 resolutions.
Okay, thank you. Are there any council questions? Seeing no hands going up, I will open the public hearing on this item. Is there any member of the public who wishes to comment on this item? Seeing no hands going up online and no one at all in the room, I'm going to close public hearing on this item. Councilmember Salinas.
It is with enthusiasm and high spirits that I move this item.
Always, yes, we are always full of high spirits. And who would like to, you know what, I'm going to second this motion, okay?
It is
And,
wonderful.
okay, so anyone wish to comment on this? Seeing no one, I will ask our city clerk to please call the roll on this motion made by Councilmember Salinas, who is really working hard tonight, seconded by myself.
All right. Yes, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Andrews, absent. Councilmember Lamnin?
Aye.
Councilmember Marquez?
Aye.
Councilmember Salinas?
Yes.
Councilmember Wahab?
Yes.
Councilmember Cermeño, absent. Mayor Halliday?
Yes, and this motion also passes with 5 aye votes and 2 absent. 2 absent. All right, so now we have come to the last numbered item on our agenda, item number 26, which regards the Cal Cities 2022 Annual Conference, and we will be adopting a resolution designating voting delegate, a voting delegate and an alternate for the annual conference, which is scheduled for September 7th through 9th. And Ms. Lenz, our city clerk, will be giving us the report on this one.
Yes, Madam Mayor. Good evening again, Mayor, council members, city staff, and community members. Next to me, I actually have one of our interns, and if you allow me to introduce her, her name is Cynthia Hernandez, and she's with Racing Leaders, and she's right here. She wanted to attend a council meeting, so she selected the meeting with 26 items. I told her we normally don't have so many items, but here she is with me. So this is the last item, Madam Mayor and council members. And the item relates to the 2022 Cal Cities Conference, as it was stated by Mayor Halliday, which is scheduled for September 7th to 9th in Long Beach. During the conference, Cal Cities will consider resolutions to establish Cal Cities policies. And sorry, I meant to advance this slide, but I didn't do it in time. So again, according to Cal City's bylaws, the city must designate a voting delegate and up to 2 alternates who will represent the council's position on legislative matters. Currently, we have Councilmember Salinas as the delegate to the East Bay Division of Cal Cities, and Councilmember Marquez as the alternate. It is our understanding that Mayor Halliday and Councilmember Salinas plan to attend the conference, and I believe you have registered to attend the conference. With that, city staff is recommending that council adopts a resolution designating 1 voting delegate and 1 alternate as Hayward's representatives to Cal City's 2022 annual conference. Once the City Council adopts the resolution and designates the voting delegate and the alternate, the resolution will be submitted to Cal Cities by September 2nd. And in preparation of the September 9th meeting, the council will need to consider the Cal Cities resolutions, which will be presented to council during a special council meeting, which is currently scheduled for August 9th. If we don't have the resolutions by then the item will come before council on September 6th. We are having those 2 special meetings, which are going to be virtual meetings. And with that, Mayor, that completes the brief presentation. Staff is available to answer any questions you may have. Following any questions and answers, you may open public comment, facilitate council comments, and then consider the staff's recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, so I will ask if there are any council questions. Seeing no hands raised, I'll open public comment. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak on this item? Seeing no hands going up, I will close public comment and entertain a motion.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Salinas.
It is with my distinct pleasure and honor to nominate you as the voting delegate at the 2022 League of California's conference in Long Beach, California.
Well, thank you very much, and I would be very proud to serve if there's a second to that motion.
I'll second that motion and add in an alternate.
Yes, that would be a good idea, yes.
Enthusiasm and excitement, I will also add an alternate of Councilmember Salinas.
Yes, is the maker of the motion amenable to that, that amendment?
Well, it is just by coincidence that I will be in Long Beach, California, September 6th through the
9th, yeah.
So, absolutely.
Oh, that's so good. Okay, well then, would anyone like to comment on this motion? Seeing no one raising their hand, I will again ask our city clerk to call the roll on this motion that was made by Councilmember Salinas to nominate me as the voting delegate, amended by the seconder of the motion, Councilmember Lamnin, to add Councilmember Salinas as the alternate. And Madam City Clerk?
Yes, Madam Mayor, thank you. Councilmember Andrews, absent. Councilmember Lamnin?
Aye.
Councilmember Marquez?
Aye.
Councilmember Salinas?
Yes.
Councilmember Wahab?
Yes.
Councilmember Cermeño, absent. Mayor Halliday?
Yes.
Thank you.
And the motion carries with 5 aye votes and 2 absent. So thank you very much. I will be honored to serve, and we should be seeing those resolutions. I don't know if we'll see them by August 9th, but if we do, we'll at least have them by September 6th, I think that was, and be able to give me direction on how you would like to have, Councilmember Salinas and I direction on how you would like to have us vote, should we have to do that at the league.
That's
okay, so that brings us to council reports and announcements. Surely there are some hands for. Okay, it's not even as late as usual, but no one really has any reports or. Okay, with that, that brings us to adjournment this evening, and I will note that we will be meeting next week, but it's a special meeting at which we will be interviewing and appointing members of our boards and commissions, as we do annually. So that's next week. It will not be a regular meeting of the council. And then we will then be in recess during the summer, except for those special meetings that were just mentioned, to pass the state emergency resolution related to the pandemic. But I believe our next full regular council meeting will be on September 20th. So happy summer, everyone. And I just want to thank the council for an enormous, I'm sorry, I do see Councilmember Wahab, a little late putting your hand up there, but yes.
No, this is just as you're speaking. If our city manager could provide us with the latest COVID stats for our next meeting, or even later via email, it's just, I think that COVID has been spiking as well. And I think that, we just want to make sure that we make our announcements on social media to sanitize, wear masks as much as possible, and so forth. And any new testing locations or anything like that, I know we've been kind of in a downturn. But if we can just make that announcement on social media. Other than that, I had no other comments, and thank you.
Yeah, good point. Madam City Manager, it probably is time.
happy to do that. I'll try to see if I can get those statistics for our next council meeting, at least to make during my comments.
And maybe just a reminder of what the latest health department advisories are. And okay, all right. Well,
Sure thing.
thank you for that. And with that in mind, I just wish everyone a safe and healthy summer. And we will be seeing each other from time to time, maybe, but not we accomplished a lot this year, and the bulk of our work for this year is over until we come back in the fall. So with that, good wishes to everybody, and this meeting is adjourned.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you.